ready.
Okay. All right. Welcome to the Village of Lake Bluff Joint Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals regular meeting on September 18, 2024. If we could have a call to order and roll call, please. Mr. Croker.
Sure. Member Fisher,
Here.
Member Miller,
Here.
Member Russell,
Here.
Member Sorensen,
Here.
Member Toll,
Here.
and Member Danley. Are you on the Zoom?
Yeah.
I see her there. She is there on the Zoom. And Chair Peters, so we have a quorum physically present, and we're all here by one means or another.
Great. A quorum of the PCZBA is physically present at the meeting. In regards to Member Danley, a notice was received by a member of the PCZBA in accordance to Walgreen, or to village policy. Excuse me. Member Danley, still thinking work. Member Danley will be deemed authorized to attend the meeting electronically unless a motion objecting to the member's electronic attendance is made, seconded, and approved by 2/3 of the members of the PCZBA physically present at the meeting. If no such motion is made, Member Danley's request to attend the meeting electronically will be deemed approved. Is there such a motion? Hearing none, Member Danley's participation is approved. Thank you. All right. Agenda item number 2. Non-agenda items and visitors' public comment time. The commission allocates 15 minutes during this portion of the meeting for those individuals who'd like the opportunity to address the board on any matter not listed on the agenda. Each person addressing the board is asked to limit their comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Barring agenda item number 6, is there anybody that wishes to approach the board at this time? Seeing none, we'll proceed to agenda item number 3, consideration of the August 7, 2024 special meeting minutes. I trust that all the commissioners have had a chance to review the minutes. Any proposed revisions or other changes?
I have quite a few numerous small changes, but none of them change the intent of the minutes, so I'd like to just pass them on to Mike, and staff can then incorporate them if no one has any objections.
That would be fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for reviewing them so closely, George.
Any other commissioners? Okay,
Motion to approve with Member Russell's adjustments.
thank you. Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Agenda item number 4, consideration of the August 21, 2024 regular meeting minutes. Same scenario, everybody's had a chance to review. Any proposed revisions?
I have the same comment for my comments, a lot of little ones, no big ones.
No.
I have one comment on something supposedly said on page 3, third paragraph. States, Member Miller asked whether parceling would be allowed. I have no idea what that means, and I doubt I said parceling. So if we can just exclude that sentence.
Okay, thank you, Member Miller.
Thank you.
I had the same question.
Yeah, whatever that
didn't know.
means.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other proposed revisions or other changes? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Make a motion to pass the minutes with the adjustments requested.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right, agenda item number 5, public hearing, Rio Development Plan for the Lake Bluff Yacht Club at 503 Sunrise Avenue. Mr. Rourke, if you'd like to give an overview of that, please.
Yep, let me get your PowerPoint up here.
Thank you.
Sure.
Before Scott starts, I'd like to note that I did participate in the preparation of the yacht club plans, so I'm going to recuse myself for this item, and I'll sit in the audience.
Thank you, Member Russell.
For full disclosure, I am a yacht club member, and I have been storing my paddle boards there. So I do have an interest, but I was not part of any of the planning. I don't believe there's any conflict as far as making any decisions on this matter.
Thank you, Member Toll. Anyone else? Okay. If you could raise your right hand, sir. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And if you could state your name for the record, please? and your
Scott
address.
Stradiff.
Please proceed.
Okay. Members of the board, good evening. My name is Scott Stradiff, and I will be presenting this petition tonight on behalf of the Lake Bluff Yacht Club. Gretchen Seymour is also here tonight to field any specific questions you may have regarding the yacht club or the history of the club. The primary intent of this petition is to request approval of the proposed design for reconstruction of the Lake Bluff Yacht Club located on Sunrise Beach. Since 1963, the Lake Bluff Yacht Club has provided boat storage on South Beach for local residents and members who share a love of sailing and getting out on the lake. The original yacht club structure was torn down recently to accommodate the development of the North Shore Water Reclamation District water tank project. The club now intends to reconstruct its facility to accommodate the same boat storage for members and the community and to continue their mission as a world-class sunfish sailing club, offering the highest quality sailing programs, including racing instruction, family participation, social activities, and community involvement. We have initiated a comprehensive preliminary design process with all of the players associated with the project, including the Village of Lake Bluff, members of the North Shore Water Reclamation District, and members of the Lake Bluff Yacht Club, resulting in the site layout and design we are presenting to you tonight. Next slide. This is the overall plat of survey showing the general footprint and location of the facility. Next slide. This is the proposed site layout. As you can see in this diagram, there were a number of obstacles to contend with when exploring options for the design layout of the new club. Maintaining specified distances from the multiple service access points of the water tank below. Additionally, there was a very strong emphasis on minimizing the encroachment of the beachfront area with the proposed design. The program called for 15.5 racking systems, providing a comparable amount of boat storage to what they had before. We are proposing that the southern boundary will not encroach any further than 5 feet from the south property line. Also proposed in this design is a small, centrally located enclosed boat storage shelter to accommodate 2 Kodiak-style boats owned by the club. And then for security measures, there is an 8-foot-tall perimeter fence with 3 access entry points shown on this diagram. Next slide. This is the east elevation showing the central storage shelter facing the beach and the adjacent entry points and the boat storage systems. Next slide. This is the north elevation showing the racking systems as well as how we are accommodating the natural grade elevation changes on the beachfront. This is a section detail of the boat storage and racking system. We are proposing a cedar timber structure consisting of 8x8 posts, 8x10 headers, 2x6 roof rafters with pre-cut rafter tails, and we are proposing a metal ribbed roof over the sailboat storage. This is a diagram of the unistrut racking system proposed for the sailboat storage. There is also a real-life mock-up of this system at the Municipal Services Building. These racks, 15.5 in total, will be set inside of the proposed timber structure. So I think that's it. So this petition was presented to the ABR, or the ARB, last Tuesday evening, and the design was unanimously approved, with the exception of some color choices that we're going to be working on over the next month or so. So with that, I hope this board has a clear understanding of the intent for the project, and I will now open it up for discussion. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Scott. Who'd like to start?
I can. I just have a couple questions. In terms of, is it basically storing the same number of boats and such, or?
It is,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, so, and the footprint and everything, although in a different place, is pretty much the same kind of square footage?
It's the
about?
same footprint, except our same square footage, except we were able to get about 1,500 square feet of additional beachfront with the proposed design, which was
Okay, all right,
strongly encouraged.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Ms. Sorensen?
Just out of curiosity, is there higher demand than you are able to accommodate with storage?
Gretchen, you might be able to answer this question.
If she wants to speak, she has to be sworn in. If she-
Yeah, we'll have to swear you in too, Gretchen.
Yes.
If you could raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm Gretchen Seymour. I'm the current Commodore of the Lake Bluff Yacht Club. Thanks for hearing us today. To your question, we would never be able to build something big enough to support demand. I mean, I just think there will always be more demand than we can supply. So the unistrut racking, the beauty of that compared to, I don't know if any of you saw what we used to have, the wooden racks that were pictured there. This unistrut system is almost like an erector set. So it can be moved. So as boats change, if we have more kayaks, more paddle boards, it can kind of change and be more flexible.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Just make a quick comment. As a yacht club member, I've used it. I've seen the value that this facility has brought to Lake Bluff residents and non-residents, for that matter, for so long. I grew up in town. I did junior sailing. I think it's just such a wonderful resource. And this is, it was sad to see the resources need to be spent to rebuild it, but at the same time, I think it's a great opportunity. And this looks like a very reasonable project and coherent with the site.
Thank you, Mr. Joel.
I think
Mr. Miller?
the footprint being about the same as it was, updating the facility is certainly a necessary project, and I guess we promised you this when we tore it down to begin with, that we'd have you rebuild it, so I'm total improvement of this.
Thank you. Commissioner Danley?
Looks like we lost her.
I don't see her connected.
Okay. From my perspective also, I saw no concerns regarding the proposed new structure. I thought the reduction in beach exposure was great. The fact that the ABR has already looked and reviewed and virtually approved is certainly a strong positive, so I have no concerns either. We have it, Mike?
No, I don't see Commissioner Danley on there.
Any other comments from the commissioners? All right. Probably should wait till we get Jill back on.
We can see if we can move.
Yeah. We might pause for just a minute or two to see if Member Danley is able to reconvene.
Okay.
Is she? Okay. Thank you, Drew. Okay. All right. We've got confirmation on that. Barring any further discussion, is there a motion?
I move to recommend the village board approve the Rio development plan in the form of the draft ordinance.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, could we have a vote, please, Mr. Folk?
Sure. Member Toll,
Aye.
Member Sorensen,
Aye.
Member Miller,
Aye.
Member Fisher,
Aye.
and Chair Peters.
Aye. Yeah, thank you very much. Motion carries, obviously. Next steps, Mr. Folk?
They're going to go to the village board Monday night.
All right. Thank you.
Yep, sure.
All right. Agenda item number 6, workshop discussion regarding proposed uses at 700 Crabtree Lane.
Yep, I will do that. There you go.
Yeah, and just so the public is aware, we have a sign-up sheet, should
I gotta
anybody
stop
wish to,
sharing mine. Yep, okay.
anybody wish to have comment this evening. I think it's up at the podium. And we'll have to, swear them in. Okay.
This is just a discussion, an informal discussion. No public
I think it's up at the podium.
Right next to it.
Yeah, Eden, maybe we can.
We
should
could
just
probably,
pass it around?
we could just circulate it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hi, my name's Emily Van Bell. We sent over this deck ahead of time, so I know that you guys have hopefully had a chance to look at it. I see one no. Has anyone else not seen this? We'll go through it anyways. But this. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
That is better, yeah.
Is that better?
It does pick your voice up a little better when you're a little closer to it, yep.
We'll just yell if you can't hear me. Sure. My name is Emily Van Bell. The purpose of coming here today is to simply workshop and have a discussion on the intended use that we have for the property located at 700 Crabtree. The deck should have come to you ahead of time. If not, this is what it is, and we'll take you through it just so you can get a sense of what the concept is and what the idea is, and then hopefully we can have a further discussion. Obviously, you're all familiar with the property itself. The general concept of this is to create a social members club. We want to focus more on sustainability and green practices. We also want to focus on regenerative farming and inclusivity of the community. The intent behind this is to not be a walled-off club, but rather to create public accessibility and to include the broader community at large. There's 3 lots currently listed on the site. There's Lot 1, which is where the primary residence is. Lot 2 is where the polo field and the stables are, and Lot 3 is essentially open land. Lots 2 and 3 are currently zoned agricultural, and we would intend to maintain them that way. Our hope is to create greenhouses to grow and to keep that land for farming and for educational purposes that would be available to the greater community. The club model itself would be something that would be similar to other private members clubs in the area. Obviously, there's no golf course, there's no tennis. The primary intent would be for a place to socialize, to network, to work, to gather. Private events would take place there, weddings, parties, things like that. It would be available to the greater public should a member choose to sponsor that person. So in most respects, it would operate like a traditional members club or a country club. As far as club usage, though, as I mentioned, to me, what I find most attractive about this land is that currently it's a residential property, and the only people that get to see that are the people that live on that property. In doing this venture, we would be able to open it up to the public so the public could also enjoy it and use it in ways that it currently is not being used. Second to that, obviously Crabtree is a cornerstone of the village. It's beautiful, and it's right on the water, and there really are no other properties like it. And what we would plan to do is maintain its current state. We're not looking to build a bunch of dwellings on it. We're not looking to cut up the land in any way. We want to keep it as it is and preserve it how it is and work within the confines of the footprint, because this land is very special and should stay how it is. As far as what we want to talk about is obviously its current zoning as residential and agricultural, how we would use it, and we want to just hear from you as far as questions, thoughts, just so we can move forward with our next steps and work with you. I think I cannot stress enough how collaborative we want to be with the village, with zoning, with the greater community at large. There's a lot of opportunity to give back to the community, to include the community. For me, I've got 2 little kids, so my particular interest is in the education part for children and how we can bring them here, show them how food is grown, how we should treat our land and things like that, and really just inspiring that next generation. Do you want to add?
Yeah, I think thank you very much, Ms. Van Bell. I think the approach we're going to use is that we'll have the commissioners ask questions, have a dialogue with you, and then we'll invite the public to give individual brief comments, and then maybe, again, have the commissioners talk and have a dialogue. So,
Great.
Who'd like to start? Member Russell.
Has your project been presented and vetted with the immediate neighbors on Crabtree Farms? And if so, are they in support?
No, we wanted to, as I had mentioned to Mike and Drew, who I also spoke with, we wanted to first speak to zoning, so much of this is contingent on zoning variances. So it felt premature to do that before talking to all of you to see if those variances would even be an option at first. Should this discussion progress, though, our next steps would be to talk to each and every individual in the community and the neighbors to hear any questions, any concerns, and see how we can support those.
So, I mean, one of the big questions in analysis of the zoning board is to determine your proposed project and its impact on the neighborhood.
Right.
So we would certainly need to know and get a much better feel for the size of the proposed club membership, the number and types of events that are proposed through the year, and focusing more on the club and the horse-related uses as opposed to the farming aspect, which I view as sort of a side element of this project in reality. Another very important element is the access. What is the, if you haven't talked to the other neighbors, then you don't know at this point how members would access the club, correct?
To answer the first question, as far as the club membership piece itself, we are currently looking at a membership group of 300. Most of that would be locals, some of that would be non-local.
My name is Demetha Arsakarutna. I'm with the Fonseca. We're the capital advisors to Ms. Van Bell. So when we look at this project, it's a 30-acre project. It's already been established with 13 stables and a polo field. So it already had some use to have, obviously, a big assembly there. When we looked over the guidelines that you're already working on in Lake Bluff with dark skies, sub-regional tourism, and keeping, focus on the central business district, we want to have this workshop to talk to not only the neighbors, but to the community to make sure this is going to be good for you. So the events that we're thinking about are going to be in line with the kind of events you'd want to have. What's happened post-COVID is you've seen a big rise in vertical farming, private farms. We actually work with a large group that has about 2 million generational family farms called Terra Top Farms. They're actually backed by some people in the North Shore. So we see that there's a real big return to agrarian lifestyle as well as equestrian lifestyle, and it's a great place to bring people. So the social aspect isn't a golf club, it isn't to be elitist, but it's to really bring people through. So you'd see things like, we'd flood some of the field to have like a little bit of ice skating pond, like, horse-driven, carriage rides, things like that. So that basically you kind of return to Americana. And to your point, sir, is that of course the people that are living there are already enjoying this acreage, and we would work with them. But the idea is not to have, big events or concerts, but to have this in as an elegant way where people can bring their families and, really enjoy the land the way it's intended. So again, dark sky principles to really enjoy outdoor activities, the night sky, and the outdoors without having to change what's there. So it's already established. All we're doing is trying to look at the occupancy restrictions so we can look at debt service. That's what it looks like for operating costs.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I do hope you understand that, I'm sure my fellow members would agree that we would have to have a much better feel for the proposed intensity of use by the private members versus what would really be allowed for use by the public members.
That's right.
And certainly for those residents along East Blodgett Avenue in particular, that is a very nice, quiet street. It has been ever since it was constructed. Very limited access to the farm along East Blodgett. And if it turns out that 100% of the club activities, all of the horses that are brought in by all of the various members, it's going to change the intensity along Blodgett tremendously. And it's very difficult for us to give you, or for me anyway, an opinion of whether I would even entertain this without having a much, much more in-depth feel to your proposed operations. I mean, you referenced building a commercial kitchen. How many of the members, I think it's only an 8 or 9 bedroom home, how many members would stay at night? Will there
There'd be no overnights or stays. This would be daytime to evening operating hours. So no proposed hotel rooms, Airbnb, B&B, nothing like that. This would be primary daytime, evening hours of operation.
And have you researched from a legal perspective? There's a 200-foot wide conservation easement all across the southern
Correct.
end of the property, and with the change in ownership and the change, there will be some change in use, whether you could even maintain
The easements would carry over, and yes, the equestrian piece could maintain, and where those easements are placed doesn't affect our intended use because most of that use is taking place either in that polo field area or what we are asking would be that residential to go from residential to commercial or special use, as that would then turn into the main clubhouse area.
So let me reframe this a little bit for everyone. So obviously, when you're working with community groups, you're gonna be involving the community, and you wanna do this in a positive way. So our approach is to listen and understand what your directives are, to look at the traffic studies, to do all the work that makes sense, and that informs us how we will tend to, make the membership of the property. If you look at the screen, Estelle Manor is a good example, and also Blackberry Farms. What you're seeing is this return to the environment where everyone's interested in having places they can go beyond just the natural parks, but places that are designed to really embrace your family, embrace your clients, whatnot. And it's not just about golf or sailing, but you're able to, I'm a sailor and I love sailing, but you want to be able to have dinner and enjoy the land. So it's not just going for dinner, but you'll be able to walk and then enjoy downtown Lake Bluff. So we've been looking at the egress, not just on the roads, but micromobility. How can we connect some of the paths, the trails, maybe bring in more of a connection to the downtown district? Because there's no benefit in having something isolated or in a silo, right? So to your point, Mr. Russell, the first thing that we're trying to do is just make everyone aware and then enter into a robust dialogue so we have everyone's concerns and then kind of mitigate those concerns by doing thoughtful planning.
Okay, well, I certainly look forward to educating myself on more of the details of the operation as they become available. The only real plus as I sit here right now is that it's my understanding that Mr. Zenni's property could probably legally be subdivided even if he kept the estate home and have 8 or 9, 10 additional 1 1/2 acre lots.
Yes.
I don't know how many people understand that with the Crabtree Farm zoning, but the entire south half of Crabtree Farm is zoned 1.5 acres. And, there is a big public right-of-way easement that comes off of Blodgett extending to the north. A developer would have the right, if he complied with all of our size standards, to build a road and create 1.5 acre lots. So there could be, under rough estimates, about 10 1.5 acre lots added on Mr. Zenni's property, preserve the conservation easement that's all along the south edge, and preserve the estate house. So
Correct. Yeah.
that's a plus. That's a plus.
It does. It takes one developer to come in and build 10 houses on that lot. And that is not something I would want to see happen, and I can't imagine that's something people of the village would want to see happen. And obviously with what we're proposing, that would never happen, so.
And one more point of clarity, you did indicate that part of Lot 2, the middle lot where the polo field is now, part of it would become converted to agricultural purposes. Can you just give me a rough percentage of how much of Lot 2 you actually feel would, in the final design, would become agricultural purposes as opposed to being retained for the,
It would be a minor portion, and it would actually be more of a bordering piece of that field, and that would be served more for where flowers and things like that would grow. Those serve as a natural pesticide and ways to keep unfriendly garden foes away. So that would be that piece. It's also really beautiful to look at a field of flowers surrounding a polo farm. So that, it's a small portion.
okay.
And I don't think there'd be too much as far as redrafting lines from that standpoint, just because it would be so small. But I did want to include that.
And I also think it's
Thank you.
important to state that Ms. Van Bell is also a resident, so she's quite aware of the neighborhood and doesn't want to see any big changes. And I think to your point, Mr. Russell, and to Mr. Chairman, is that perhaps you could put together a small committee or a group that we could work with to kind of make sure we're understanding your concerns, so we're not even opening up those doors that don't make sense, and kind of working within the scope that makes sense for the community.
I understand change is not often in Lake Bluff or Lake Forest, and when change does come across, it's often greeted with much suspicion. I cannot emphasize enough that my willingness, our willingness to work with the village is endless. I see so much value in working with the community, with the village. I want to hear from the public. I don't want to make this is a thorn in anyone's side. The intent is to preserve this land first and foremost and treat it with the utmost respect that it deserves. And if we can bring something that serves this vision, but also the community at large, that's my goal.
And I think we should close on this point, and then we'll have to open up the question, is that it's a stewardship play. So we're not looking to really change too much, maybe tweak it a little bit, but really keep what's there, even though it's not historical, but to keep that open feeling, again, dark sky, so really enjoy the open space, so people feel like they have a place to go that's a little bit special, and it's unique. And sir, if you're interested in that.
I just had one other question I forgot, is would you envision that the club would operate year-round?
Yes. Yes.
I think horses would be there year-round, but depending on, like, because most people that might be interested might be also traveling, so it might be slower, like in January and February. But then there could be some, winter activities there based on, people's interests.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell.
I've got a few questions. I appreciate you coming in and speaking with us. So just a few questions. I think, when I first read this, I said, okay, it's, definitely a change of use. It's not something that we've really ever considered for that site. And so I think that might be why so many people are here, because it is a shock to the system, because it's not in our comprehensive plan, and so we've never discussed it. So with that being said, I think we just need more details, right? I mean, this packet, even your presentation here, is so lacking in minutia that it's hard for us to envision really what's going to go on.
I think the initial point of us coming here was to, at the very least, just have a preliminary discussion, to introduce the idea, to put it in front of you, to say, this is what we're thinking. If there's an absolute immediate not a chance, that's, I think, first and foremost what we wanted to comprehend. And second to that is to get feedback. Obviously, we'll have traffic studies done, we'll have things like that done, but I think a preliminary discussion is what we wanted to have today.
Aaron, let me just say this as a financial advisor, is that, we already have CAPSEC that's interested, but there's no benefit to do any of this stuff unless there's an interest with you. So we're not gonna spend money fighting with you guys, right?
Yep.
But the biggest thing is that this has already been built with 13 stables and a polo field. So what's the intended use? To do something with it. So again, we're trying to stay with that stewardship and work with the community, because it has to be something that's beneficial to everyone. It doesn't make any sense. And our investors don't want to be involved in any kind of litigation. So again, we would love to have your board and the community members give us your opinion so we can make sure you're comfortable and socialize it properly.
Appreciate that. And so I guess a couple more specific questions. You said you had an environmental focus or sustainability focus. So is your argument that in order to preserve the agriculture, the open space, that the private club will maintain that and it couldn't be done otherwise? I mean, that just seems like a lot of it seems like you're pushing the agrarian lifestyle for the community. So why does it have to be a private club too?
What would you propose? Making a public club and just have everybody walk in there?
I don't know. But I'm just asking you, is that what you're arguing? Is that it has to be a private club in order to support the community aspect of it?
Right, so because it's an equestrian club, it's expensive, right? Just like a yacht club, you have to run, there's a maintenance cost. So we want to make sure we have the right people that are able to support that. And on top of that, you want it to be well-maintained, so it's not an eyesore, so it's something that's attractive, that is bringing that sub-regional tourism, right? So that's kind of what we're looking for. And I think we're not looking for big memberships, we're keeping it tight. But there is that lot 3 that we are looking to do a lot of fun things with the community so they feel they're a part of it. And, we're in the North Shore, let's not be, there's tons of private clubs. I live in this city, we have tons of private clubs. And now there's even more with these dining clubs that you have to be a member at. So it just brings that mindset so we don't get involved in all the social issues. Because some people say, well, I want to behave this way, and you can't really correct that behavior because there's all these different laws. But now with the private club, you're able to do that a little bit differently.
I'm just having a hard time believing that you're going to open up even part of it to the community in general when, the vast majority of the operation is going to be the private club.
Why, just out of curiosity, why is that hard for you to believe?
I'm just skeptical. That's all. I'm skeptical.
So on Friday, we have a call with Mercy Home. We actually invest our money with, with our resources to help them with math tutoring. So we're always doing things that are humanistic. That's what our investors look for. We actually are donating a suite at the Chicago White Sox for the Palestinian Relief Children's Fund. So I would invite you to come and walk with us because this is exactly what we do. And every single client that we work with it's always about inclusivity, bringing people into the next generation. And if kids don't understand how horses and farms and where carrots come from, they're never going to appreciate it. This is why sailing, I think Gretchen can speak to this. I'm also certified by U.S. Sailing, teach them math and science of sailing. If you don't love something, you're not going to take care of it. So if you see it from a distance, but you don't get to walk around barefoot and enjoy, seeing the stars at night, why would you protect it? You'll just build a high-rise because you're making more money.
I get your concern, though. I do. And I have 2 little kids, and where this generated from is with my little kids, we have to go to this place for apple picking, and this place for pumpkins, and this place for a Christmas tree, and I'm driving halfway across Illinois just to do all these things. But if we can create that in one place locally, and there's give-back incentives in place, and we can support the community at large, why wouldn't we do that? That serves everybody around here. Certainly makes my life easier, but it is sort of a strange juxtaposition to have this exclusive members club and this public-facing piece, and I get that. But to me, that's what's so interesting and appealing about this model is that with this property specifically, we can do both. And they do need each other because, as you know, it's a very expensive piece of property. So the club can carry this public-facing piece in the scale that we want to, and they both can coexist.
And that's why we're here tonight, to socialize the idea, to understand if this makes sense, because having that zoning change speaks to occupancy, which allows us to speak to debt service. Mm-hmm. And that allows us to support the operations of farms properly and safely.
Understood. And now, so I'm not familiar with Estelle Manor, but I am.
These were just sort of reference
familiar
points.
with Blackberry Farm, and that's kind of a stretch to compare the Crabtree property to Blackberry Farm.
The
right?
Blackberry, it was.
I mean,
No.
So is there?
I think with Blackberry, it was they have the shops and the produce and the artisanal goods and the things like that we would also propose could be sold on that lot 3, which would be public facing. So
Really.
It's
Border
this is
single-family
more,
homes
well,
in a dense neighborhood, right?
I think it's more
So
imagery.
is there an example of something like this that is operating currently?
There's a place in Amagansett, New York called Amber Waves Farm, and it's a very similar model. It's a little more rustic looking. However, it is almost an identical concept. You have a private farm that sources produce, offers CSA boxes, offers things like that. It also provides children's education through hourly classes. They have a restaurant. They have a piece where the public can come and buy all these things. They also then subsequently have outpost stores up and down the Long Island area. It's a very similar model and was a lot of the inspiration for this.
You said it's Amber Waves?
Amber Waves Farm, yep.
And the other thing is, this is a very unique property, as everyone knows. And just like the gentleman before us and Gretchen were talking about the yacht club, there's actually access to water, so sailing is actually on the table, right? So the nice thing about it is, this is a fingerprint, it's a unique property that has to be formed by the community and the neighbors, so we can make it rich for this area, because it's not gonna be, you know, Amber Waves or Estelle, but we're just kind of showing you what we're aspiring to.
Yep.
Is Amber Waves in a village?
Yes, it's the village.
Adjacent to the
Yep,
village?
Yep, it's actually right off the main drag, so,
Main drag?
yeah, I mean, right on it.
Okay, this is not on the main drag.
This is not on the main drag.
No,
but-
no.
One final question for me before the other members can say their piece. Just ballpark, what would you expect for the private club operation? What would the occupancy be? What would we be seeing as far as how many people on site at one time?
Sure, I think roughly during weekdays, preliminary research has led to 30 to 50 cars a day coming and going. On weekends, it's closer to 45 to 70 throughout the course of the day.
And there might be special events with special use permits, but typically, if you're seeing the utilization even downtown, a lot of these clubs, like University Club, people are just staying at home, right? Because they're not going to work 5 days a week. So because it's an equestrian club, it's a little bit different. You'll probably see a little bit more of those riders. There's like 13 stables, so you probably see at least 13 to 20.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Member Toll. Member Sorensen?
Yeah, I'm curious if you can tell me a little bit more of the market research that led your team to this location, and what is part of what's driving this?
Sure. It's been an interesting research process because there's obviously this idea that so much hinges on that perfect piece of land. Initially, we were looking in other surrounding towns, but the lakefront piece is obviously what was most appealing because you're looking at, beautiful Lake Michigan, and why not? So we spent a lot of time considering what towns and villages would make the most sense as far as draw club membership interest, where other clubs are, things like that, which ultimately led us to the Lake Forest, Lake Bluff area. There were a couple properties that we looked at, but ultimately this one really checked a lot of the boxes. First and foremost, that agricultural piece that it has is so rare. I mean, there's not a lot of properties like this one, and then to have this one with the stables, with so much of the infrastructure, with the agricultural zoning, with the waterfront, it was sort of this needle in a haystack property, quite frankly. And as far as additional research, this is based off of a social membership club. This is something in London and in Paris and New York and LA. These are, at this point, a dime a dozen in those cities. And they're different to a country club in that the initiation fee is smaller, the membership pool is different, it's more inclusive, it's just a different way to socialize. So that was another impetus, is we don't have a lot of that here. And we certainly don't have a lot of that on the North Shore. So that, all of those things kind of snowballed into this idea. And again, this perhaps it's premature in talking to you right now, but I feel so strongly about being collaborative in the best possible way. And so I rather have this open dialogue with the public and with you, and we can pivot. This is fluid. This is not, we're not the big bad developers that are coming here and sticking our foot down. We don't want to fight.
There's very little development on this project.
Yeah, we don't want to fight. We just want to see if this is something that's of interest.
And one of the other pieces we looked at is that, Oak Brook Polo Club didn't have a season this year for some reasons. We couldn't get all their underpinnings, right? Probably goes to operating costs. But we do see things like equine therapy and having this relationship with, some of these children that are not acquainted with livestock to be a part of that, right? So it helps them to de-stress and, be a part of it. So that's why I'm saying it is a different kind of private club where it's safe, it's social, we're able to enforce certain rules, but that people can let their kids run around and not have to worry about there's gonna be somebody that can't be asked to leave the property if they're not behaving correctly. You can't do that in Chicago. If you're at Millennium Park, it's a problem. We've all been down there. We know what's happened in the last few years, right? So this is becoming a response to, that's why you're seeing a lot of privatization of clubs and dining places, because quite frankly, they've had trouble enforcing rules that were just normal 5 years ago, but are now challenging.
Following up on that market research aspect, when you first started exploring options, was the equestrian element part of that option? It seems like you've only got 13
13
stables.
stalls. Mm-hmm.
And a membership of 300, so I'm envisioning that it actually is more of a social club, that there won't be that many people involved with
The
the
equestrian-
equestrian aspect, because unless you've already got some blueprint to build more stables.
No intent to build additional stables. If that were to happen, it would be an additional 2 or 3, something minor. Those stables were a happy bonus to the property. It certainly wasn't an initial focus. Horses were always an idea and a hope, but to have, and there were other properties we looked at that were current horse true working farms with horses, or were riding centers, things like that. So while it was on the wish list, it wasn't a necessity for the social club, but of course with this property, as unique as it is, it just happened to be there, so.
All right, Member Frederick.
I just have a few questions, and one is kind of for staff. Does the exclusive membership club and the community combination, does that fit with the PUD or PRD regulation, or would that be something that would have to be a variance? Is that?
That would, yeah, it does not fit with the PRD because there is a provision, as we,
It's
noted
all
in the
community,
memo,
right?
That, some things only count as a
Right.
public benefit or whatever if they're open to the public.
Right.
Yeah, so it would not fit in what PRD
So the
currently allows.
membership club portion would be a variant, would require
Yeah, it
some
would
kind of.
require a text amendment, yeah,
Okay.
to make it allowable.
I was just
in
trying to
some
understand on that.
Yeah.
And then I think you answered the question, you're not planning overnights or hotel accommodations. Will someone live there? Will it be a residence or purely commercial?
There'll be people that
The-
maintain
and
the horse.
There's
Simply
possible to
staff?
be, right, there'll be staff.
Okay.
And possibly a grounds person on site, full-time living there, but as far as
But
multiple
not a
residents,
residence
no.
per se, okay. And then, so the access road that you're anticipating is sort of the drive that goes in right now off of Blodgett, down by Moffett, kind of, not as far as
Correct.
Moffett.
We'd hope to utilize both the Sheridan entrance and the Blodgett
Okay,
entrance,
so you
but
plan to use both?
Right.
Okay, all right, and then, and then just one point in my head, the lack of sidewalks on Blodgett with that kind of traffic, to me, is problematic, I guess, so just raising that. I think those are my questions, then. Intriguing idea, for sure, but.
Thank you, Member Fisher. Member Miller.
I'm going to hold off till the public speaks, but an initial comment in my mind is 10 homes, maybe 20 cars, maybe a little bit more. It's quite different than 50 to 70 cars traveling down Blodgett every
sure.
day.
But that's 10 homes that take away from that land, so.
I know, but they're 1.5 acre homes, and they're going to be nice homes. So I don't have that much of a problem with that. I do have a problem with 60 to 70 cars.
Let me correct that, sir. That's not every day. That's.
I understand. I understand. It's weekends when there's kids around, families around. It's very intrusive. It'll be very intrusive to the people who live on that block. I can tell you now. Now, if you took the road that comes off of Sheridan, which I doubt you'll be able to, because those people will really object, that might change the equation. But if you're coming down Blodgett with that many cars, that's very upsetting and intrusive. When the polo field was active, they had one international event or one national event a year, and that was fun. But I can see, 67 cars, maybe more on wedding nights. You talked about a limousine. Where's the limousine?
Right, so we talked, there's ideas, number one, of utilizing the metro station parking, if there's a way to establish some type of either lease or use there for cars, and then we would have internal shuttles or car services taking.
Okay, but you wouldn't do that during the day when the farm is active.
I'm sorry?
You couldn't do that
For
during the day
special
when the farm
events
is.
and things like that. What we're
special
also
events.
trying to encourage, correct, is for members that obviously are not hyper-local, is a car service from the club itself. So we're eliminating multiple comings and goings from multiple cars, from multiple members.
Now, there's two, if I'm not mistaken, there's two accesses to, from Blodgett to Crabtree Farms. One that's being utilized for the 3 lots to the to the west of Crabtree Farms, correct?
Yeah, to the west of the.
And then I
property.
thought there's another access point further down where there's a fence, and Mrs. Zaney put up barriers at one time to prevent people from entering there. Isn't that a second entranceway?
Yeah, that's the access
the main
through
one.
Zenny's property there where the barriers
Okay,
were,
but the farm property would access through the more westerly.
No, the west one is west of this property, so I don't think they would.
It's on the, it's on the west end of the
But it
property.
doesn't connect through.
No, but it's for the, I'm talking about for the farm stand.
Oh,
Yeah,
So there'll be actually, there'll be 3 access points to this theoretically 3 access points.
yeah, the west one doesn't currently access into this.
No, but
property.
I think it's zoned or on the maps, it is an access point, and there's a fence there with a gate.
Okay, yeah, maybe it's possible.
And so you obviously, this is beyond, your thinking at this point, but I want to hear what the public has to say.
I just want to make a point too, for the board, just after hearing everything. I don't think it would be inappropriate if, we were dealing with a large parcel, large acres along the lake. We could always create a new zoning district, rezone it. We're not stuck with, what it's currently zoned at. We could create a new, lakefront club district. If we are dealing with a private club, that's not something we have right now. So I just also want to put that out there, that would be a possibility
okay.
that we could explore as well.
Yeah, thank you, Courtney. So you're not contemplating any or many new structures, is that correct?
No, be minor additions to the existing residence. And then second to that would be on that third lot, 2 small structures to house produce and things that would be for sale.
And what sort of parking do you have on the site now?
There's currently on the third lot, there's room. If we were to carve out space for a parking lot, there would obviously be space there. And then the front entrance to that residential spot can accommodate 10 cars. So, but it predominantly would be on that third lot as well.
Okay. This might be an appropriate time to have the public, speak. I guess one cautionary statement, we want to be professional, we want to have decorum, and why don't we limit it to 3 minutes per person, trying to avoid redundancy. So if you want to go to the podium, sign in. Yes, but we want to make sure it's memorialized on the audio.
Public,
Yeah,
public
Yes.
comment.
yeah. Whoever wants to start.
Do we
Should
have
we
a
move?
list?
Sure.
Yes. Sure, wherever you're comfortable. And if you could state your name for the record and your
My name
address.
is Lynn Moosman, and I live on Blodgett, approximately the middle of Blodgett between the east and the west ends of our street. And my question to you is, we're talking about traffic on Blodgett and traffic in general. Have you done any studies at this point, or plan to do studies, to get actual estimates of how much traffic between event traffic, commercial traffic, private event and private club member traffic, what that increase would be on Blodgett, as well as on Sheridan Road?
Yes, Mayor. In fact, that's why we're trying to socialize that idea first to see if it's it's dead on arrival, or now the next step would be doing these traffic studies. And as the gentleman said, to start to talk with neighbors to kind of get their feel for things. So yes, that is on the roadmap.
And what the studies will do is we're gonna benchmark Shore Acres, Knollwood Country Club, similar and surrounding clubs that would have similar types of use and similar types of traffic to have a better understanding of. We've done preliminary benchmarking there, but to do more
Can you get
in-depth
the
studies
microphone?
and also cross-reference that with the daily traffic that currently happens on
Okay.
and Sheridan.
In part of that is and I'll keep with my 1 more minute timeframe, is I had experience in a different living situation where a development came in, let's say similar, and there was an access road that was a small, quiet little 2-lane road similar to Sheridan. And after the public outcry fell down, the development was built, the next step was the money went into building this little road, making it a 4-lane road, which means at what point would you actually stop the development? Because after this is built and people want more access on Sheridan Road, our little road, when would you come in? I mean, is it possible that you would come in and turn that into a 4-lane road?
Well, because if something changed, we could then reduce the membership, right? So it's all,
Oh,
so
okay.
occupancy drives debt service. That's how we get to operational costs. So we're not building anything, we're not trying to change anything. And if, like we said, if 30 or 40 people come there, they're gonna be polite neighbors, they're gonna be, people buy from this area, right? They're not coming from across the state. So it will just be like, really for the
Okay.
people in the North Shore.
So we can expect some more data on how much traffic increase
yes.
would be on Blodgett?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for attending.
Lynn, one thing, Sheridan Road's a state road.
Okay,
It would require a state to decide on expansion.
thank you for that information, that's helpful.
Thank you. Who's next?
Barbara Norton, my husband Al is here. We live at 343 East Blodgett. And right when we moved in, we asked our realtor what was going to happen across the street from us. And they said that at that time, 5-acre lots were what was approved, and private houses on 5-acre lots if Mr. Zenny ever sold. And then we got letters, I don't know, a couple years ago, that they said they were going to reduce, would we approve reducing the lot size? And I believe it wasn't 1.5 acre size, it was like 2.5 acres. And we said, okay, fine, as long as it's residential. It's not so much that we have a problem. We understand that things change. We know Mr. Zenny wants to sell his property, and maybe it's hard for him to sell it exactly the way it is now. The problem that we're having is that access road. Right now, I don't know who's using it to bring in semis and huge construction equipment every hour on the hour. There's all kinds of dust. I'm assuming that somebody's building up the land or something, and that Crabtree will not let them go through on Sheridan. So there's 3 houses. There's our house, which is just to the right of that access road on Blodgett. In other words, we're across from the polo field. And then there's the house next door to us, owned by the Gales, that there are times when they have people directing these semis that are practically running up on their grass. I mean, this is huge equipment. There's been times where they've asked us or the people next door if they could move their cars so they can get this huge equipment in. So my main concern is, as a polo field, what happens with agriculture and horses? Are they going to be bringing in big trucks on this access road? Right now, they bring in big trucks to do the fertilization or whatever. But with agriculture, I'm assuming, I don't know if they're going to be doing everything by hand, but I'm assuming there's going to be equipment running, and it's noisy. And so I guess my main problem is that this, what was a private road, what we thought would be a private road, is now may no longer be a private road. So I would say, if the requirement is that that this new area has to build a road where they can have their own access, going through their own property instead of going on Blodgett, then it probably wouldn't be as big of an issue if you guys can help them manage everything else. But we need some sort of an easement so that we're not looking, looking at the tractors, the fertilizers, or whatever? Because right now it gets, do you know who's bringing all this equipment in, by
Yeah,
the way?
that's a lakefront erosion protection project on the Blair property, and they can't go out through Crabtree because the bridges don't hold enough weight for their trucks, so.
Well, that's okay, and I mean, we never complained about it. It's gone on, as you know, it's gone on for more than a year, and we haven't even had our windows or anything cleaned because, you know, it's a gravel road, okay? And thank God we don't have little kids, and the people next to us don't have little kids, because the trucks come through fast. And so all I'm saying is, the problem is really this access road that the vehicles literally back up into people's yards. And the same thing when they would bring the horses in, you know, and we never complained because it wasn't all the time. So anyways, so thank you for listening. You answered, or you asked questions, many of which I would have asked about the parking and what was the current tax basis and what it's going to be now, because we understood that because it was agricultural, there was a big tax exemption grandfathered in. I'm not sure, but we pay pretty high taxes in Lake Bluff. So all I'm trying to say is we should be entitled to not have heavy equipment coming into our front yards.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Okay, who's next?
Just wanted to.
Oh, yes, sir.
Ma'am, I just wanted to say, first of all, I think we're thinking that we're gonna be developing that. It's really that we're using it the way it is. So someone just brought up why that property, because it's very unique, right? So we came up with this model for that property. Simultaneously, like the gentleman, I think Mr. Miller said, if there's an international event or like a hunter-jumper event, it might be one or two events, because we have seasonality here in Chicago, right? So again, this is not to disrupt your traffic, because I don't like being, blocked with big trucks. We're not planning on having a lot of trucks coming through. So most of the stuff, if there's even a small remodel, it's gonna be manageable, and we're not gonna be changing anything really on the structures that are there. We're using what's already there. So I think that should give people a level of comfort. And simultaneously, the horses that are there aren't gonna be coming and going. If I there, and then they can be.
Do you have to use that access road on Bluff?
No, we have to do the study, man, but you're right. We'll take your considerations, and if we have to do a better turnaround or make some adjustments, again, working with zoning, we'll do that, because I guess we don't wanna have fights with people. There's no benefit, right? Yeah.
Good, thank you very much. Who's next? Yeah, please proceed. State your name for the record, please, sir.
My name is Delvin Grapes. My wife and I live on East Woodland Road, and I walk through Blodgett all the time. But my real question is to the organizers, if you're having a social, what is going to be your entity structure? Social club, you're going to end up under a 501c, which is 4 or 5 or 6. I don't remember which it is.
There's different versions.
Right, there's various versions. And also, a lot of your description of this is for public stuff, education. Are you going to seek 501c3?
Well, that's typical, yes, and we'll also do Corporation B where we're giving back, right? So there's also a give back. We talked about equine therapy, we talked about other uses of facilities, so yes.
And then there will be a C corporation or an S corporation around that? So so the organizational structure will be a for-profit with subsidiaries, which will be a 501c3 or 501(7) or whatever they are. Okay, because I have come from a not-for-profit area with trade associations and charitable organizations, and I'm always concerned about who is being organized under what part of the IRC code. So that would be my comments. I'd be a little bit concerned about the tax basis and how that's going to relate to the overall part of the village here.
Thank you very much, sir.
My name is Lee French, and my wife and I live 425 East Blodgett, directly across from what I think is Lot 3 of the proposed development, the existing land. And I apologize, we're responsible for some of the trucks that are coming through because we're currently constructing a house at 250 East Blodgett, which this project would be in our front yard. And I find it a very confusing project, and what I think you'll find from those of us in the neighborhood is that we'll have a list of super comprehensive questions, some of which have been addressed via what the organizational structure will be, what the tax status will be, traffic, and so forth. But it's very confusing because I don't know how a exclusive, super exclusive by invitation, I don't know if it's invitation, is it 300, is it 20, club, and a community asset, they seem to be sometimes in direct conflict. I don't know, and I also have experience with educational programs, children's programs, and they don't make money to share. There will not be money to share and spread around to the community. And so that confuses me greatly. And what we want to make sure, at least Margaret and I know many others in our neighborhood, is that you will help us prepare to be comprehensive. And I appreciate the questioning that we've had and the comments that you've had. What I'll say is that the owners of this property know us all. They know where we live, they know our phone numbers, and the first we heard of this was a couple nights ago. So if we're going to be a community asset, so this notion that we are going to reach out and be a neighborly project and develop programs that are going to be appropriate for the community and benefit the community, golly jeepers, we could have been talking about this. I'm sure you've been talking about this for some time.
Actually, we haven't, Mr. French, so if you'd like me to respond, I'd be happy.
No, I'm really, it's really for the board, and it's to point out that had we really had the intent to include the community and include us all, the folks on Blodgett, the folks on Crabtree Farm, and we know each other, this would have happened some time ago. So that concerns me, and that's what's confusing to me about the nature and the intention of this club, community asset, and we'll put together, and we hope you'll accept in good faith the questions that we'll have for the board and for the potential developers, because there are many. And I hope this discussion, before we get too far down the road, will be intensive and comprehensive. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Mr. French, I'm sorry, just for clarity, you're building a home within the farm limits? You're north of Blodgett?
Yes, we are building a home that is at 250, 300. It is the western access, which does not provide access, by the way, I should say, for the Zinni property right now, or ever.
Thank you.
We share a driveway, 250, 300. It is the westernmost access on the north side of Blodgett.
Okay, thank you.
Not the gated property, or not the gated drive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Who'd like to proceed?
Would you like a response to that, or?
If you, certainly you may, sir.
So, Mr. French, just to respond to you, what you're saying is that there is nothing clandestine about the operation. We have actually started the dialogue. We're not even under contract. We're trying to work through these issues to make sure we're not going to get into any kind of fighting match, right? So, going back to your thing about 501c3 designations, I served on quite a few boards, including the Union League, where we have 11 Boys and Girls Clubs. So a lot of these clubs do have a do-good aspect. And as we're talking about the Farm to Table and also the Corporation B, Equine Therapy, that is the modernization of the private clubs, because people join a lot of these country clubs just to play golf. There's nothing good about that, just playing golf, right? We're doing it a little bit differently. So to your point, I'm sorry we didn't, there's no good way to start. So before we even go into conflict, we have to understand if the numbers make sense as capital advisors, and then what is the community looking for? Because again, we're not gonna get into litigation that's gonna be a burden for the investors. So as I represent family offices, we work with BlackRock directly on Union Pension Fund money. So we do a lot of big deals. We do this all the time. So the first step is to kind of understand what is the vision for the planning committee that you guys have elected. Then we would love to sit down with all the neighbors and understand what your issues are. Maybe it's building a road, maybe it's coming up with a different use. Maybe you have special permits that only those people can be let in because they have, you know, the access for those 30 or 40 cars. We're not bringing 75 cars in a day. The other thing is that we're trying to say that the property's already been set, the table's set. It's a equestrian farm, it has a beautiful layout. There's no need to change it. How do we work with what's there to make it operable? That's it. I mean, if there's any issues, we're happy to talk about it. So again, Mr. Price, we'd love to have a conversation and invite all the neighbors. We'd love to hear all the concerns to make sure if it makes sense for Emily.
Yeah, thank you very much. Mr. Schuler?
Yeah, I'm Jack Schuler. I live on the farm. And a little bit of history. In 1985, in conjunction with John Bryant and Ed Blair, both who are deceased now, we bought the farm. And at that time, after William McCormick Blair's death, the farm was put up for sale in all sorts of lots. I don't know how many, but the whole farm was going to be sold, but with lots. Here's a farm that has such a historical significance, starting with Blodgett, who had a lot had to do with getting Abraham Lincoln elected, and then Grace Durand, and built these marvelous buildings that are in National Registry of Historical Buildings. And so the idea for the three of us is that we thought that if there was any way to preserve this farm in the way it is, we did. And so we bought the farm, and each of us put up additional 30 acres of our own property in conservancy. So basically, there's nothing more going to be there. And people tell me that it is the only working farm on Lake Michigan all the way around. And before John passed away, we were in a process, and I will finish this project. We don't have in the record that it must always be having cattle and sheep and horses, but you can do that. And so before I die, I hope to be able to get that documented also. So the idea of, I'm just kind of perplexed. I'm astonished that we're sitting here talking about building a restaurant that will serve 40 or 50 people on this pristine location that is the trademark of Lake Bluff. And if you, you said that we would only go ahead if you had agreement with the neighbors. I'm comforted by that because I speak for everybody on Crabtree Farm. We absolutely don't want this to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Schuler. Who's next?
Hi, I'm Tanya Sharman. I live on Blodgett. I'm actually Jack's daughter, too. We live on the farm next to the French's. And I just have a question. Will you even entertain the idea of having an access through Sheridan Road?
Mm-hmm. Like I said, none of the traffic studies are done, ma'am. We're just trying to get socialization of this idea. So as you say, if there's repulsion, then we have to think about it.
Well, there will be. There's no access through Crabtree Farm, period. So I'd say don't even do that study. The study should be solely through Blodgett. There's not going to be access through Crabtree. I think everyone here who is on Crabtree can agree on that. So that will not.
So Sheridan Road, yes.
It'll be only shared. So just do your study for Sheridan Road only, please. we also live on Crabtree, and if we sell the property, we have no access anymore through Crabtree. So it's only for the people who have currently lived there that access Crabtree, yeah. The other thing is, I don't know what the rezoning is, but if you rezone for whatever this would need, what if they go out of business? What could go in later? That's my thought, is like, if this is accepted, which I hope it's not, I'm not a proponent of it, but if it's accepted and it rezoned, and then in 5 years or 10 years, or in 10 years they build more buildings, or like, what is the allowances going forward? And ironically, when I read, page 44 in your notes, page 50 has the plan for Lake Bluff. And it says how we are a quaint and unique town, and that's the #1 goal of the sort of, whatever you call it, the looking forward for Lake Bluff, right? Our plan for Lake Bluff. And this is not part of that. That to me would not be along with the goals of Lake Bluff.
Thank you very much.
Actually, I can say one more thing.
Oh, yes.
So I'm selling my house soon. So if they're gonna rezone, can I rezone commercial? Can I have a commercial property? I'll ask for, I'll make more money if I can rezone as commercial.
We should talk about that.
My neighbors don't like that, but I'm saying, I should be the next one.
Letter that came in saying
Thank you.
this right before the meeting.
Who's next?
The owners to the north.
Yeah, they've not seen that, unfortunately.
Okay.
We'll give them, staff will give them.
Yeah, we'll give it.
Hearing no further,
Any
what else?
online?
Anybody online, Mike?
Is there anybody online who would like to speak on this? Hit the button to raise your hand if you'd like to speak, if you're on the Zoom. There's 2 people on the Zoom, so we'll see if they raise their hand and ask to speak. And we should mention, we did receive 3 comments by emails, too, that we distributed to the board. I don't see anyone raising their hand online.
Okay.
Jack said he got a text from a neighbor on the farm that the audio isn't working. I don't know if it's your audio or his.
Yeah, I did as well. Yeah, it's not working for people at home.
Yeah, it's.
Okay, thank you.
We'll ask Bill, our AV guy in the back room, if you can get the audio working on the Zoom.
While we address the audio issue, any other questions or comments from? Oh,
Come to the mic.
oh, Mr. Schuler?
You have to go to the
Yeah,
mic.
if you could-
You have to go to the
Yeah.
mic.
He's the one who owns the property just north of. And has been for 1 year spending enormous amounts of money protecting the Bluff. And
Yeah.
that is.
Thank you.
And for the lady that is so concerned about that, that is about to be completed. So all the trucks that are bothering you is finished now.
We never complained about it.
Yeah,
Because we
but-
figured, oh, okay, they must be
Yeah.
doing
But
something
anyway,
with
it's
blood.
it's over, it's almost completed now, yeah. Yeah. But I take your word for it, you would not proceed if the neighbors don't want you. And I would encourage you to think about whether you really want to proceed.
This guy's a brick wall,
I'm sorry. And I think Tanya made a really good point, and it will be part of our list of questions for you, but what do we do when the project fails? When the club fails, and now we're zoned for restaurants, it sounds like retail. And if this consideration is for a very specific project, like the one being proposed, Maison Margaux, and it fails, what does that mean if the zoning exists for who can, for what we can do or who can move in there? And what the obligations for the board are?
Yeah.
I just wanted to reiterate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French.
I think one of the things we're forgetting too, is we're asking for a special use variance, we're not asking to change all the zoning. I think that you're already making presumptions that the club's gonna fail. First of all, let's be clear, this has 13 stables. This was designed for a big group. So what if I just bought it as a house and I had 50 friends over every week? What are you gonna do? You're gonna stop me from having 50 friends over? It's a big property, it's 30 acres, okay? You're enjoying your property, so there's a use issue here. So what we're saying, be very clear, we're not looking to change anything, and we are looking to look at the neighbors. The bottom line is that the space is beautiful, and like you said, Jack, is that we want to make sure people can enjoy it, not just drive by it. So if you guys want it to be sheltered and cloistered and nobody else gets to use it, someone else will come in from Europe and buy it and use it as a single residence, fair, right? But we're putting together a thoughtful plan to make sure that we can bring this history and love of Lake Bluff to everyone so they can enjoy the property. And a lot of people are making this into like we're going to destroy the neighborhood. Again, Emily lives in this area. She's not a foreigner from like another part of the state. She lives here. So let's be clear about what we're trying to do. We're not trying to change anything. It's already there. We're working to make it the best version of itself for the future generations.
But it's not clear.
Sir, it is clear because if you've ever been to a private, if you've ever been to a private club, people behave, there's dress code, there's rules and regulations. If it was just like a Starbucks, everybody can show up and do whatever they want. We're trying to do this in an honest way. The first thing is to have this conversation, and if you were hearing this, resentment, that's fair, but let's have a dialogue that makes sense and tell us, like, what can we do? If it's, oh, no, don't do it, I want to keep it just the way it is, it's great for you, but it sucks for anybody who buys it, right? So now they're going to have to deal with whatever it is. So all we're trying to do is have a dialogue that makes sense and say, what can we do if it's already there?
Yeah. I think just so the record's clear, this is very, very preliminary. This is an excellent opportunity to have that preliminary dialogue. I think it's been very, very positive so far. But there are a whole host of issues, a whole host of questions that I think it's not really a formal petitioner, but the presenters will have to address and think about it, and there'll be dialogue with the village also. But so I think going forward right now, any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Yeah, go ahead.
Has there been any positive comments to date, Drew?
The truth of the matter is, I don't know that there has been, but at the same time, it's preliminary. This is not any sort of formal hearing. We have not sent out notice to the neighbors. The reason the neighbors are here because they had a communication amongst themselves and shared out information, but it hasn't been noticed.
Okay. So I would suggest that you heard what we had to say. You heard what the people here had to say. Well, and we can come back at some other time and rediscuss it and see if anything has changed, or you have that you do have positive comments from the community now that it's out there.
And we invite Mr. French and his group to put together any other questions or sit down and have a dialogue. We'd love to have that. If you're open to it. If you're not open to it, that's fair too. We just need to know where to start that conversation, who to start it with.
Well, you have your questions. Maybe bring those back at some point to another workshop and see if we can come to more of an agreement.
And I think what we'd like to deliver to the next meeting would be those traffic studies, those use intensity studies, and then having addressed with neighbors and surrounding villagers those answers to those questions and presumably answers to more questions that come up. So.
Yeah. Oh, no, I think it's just very important to have that dialogue. Just so the record's clear, I think the village first got formal notice on September 9th, so it hasn't even been, what, 9 or 10 days? So anyway, thank you very much. Hopefully it's been... Yeah, why don't we take a 2 or 3 minute recess?
There is no decision to be made. This was just a workshop. So
What is it like?
they haven't applied for anything.
There's no application on file.
So So that,
I'd like to say, like, I'd like to maybe wait 3 months, will it take 3 months, 6 months?
I would be surprised.
Recording in progress.
Okay.
What are we on, Mr. Crook, agenda item number 7?
We are, yep.
Can't go without Bruce, so
Yeah, right.
we're good. All right, back on the record, agenda item number 7, Comprehensive Land Use Recommendations Workshop. Mr. Crook, if you want to give us an overview of what the intent is this evening, that'll be great.
Sure, we have, Tesca's updates on the comprehensive plan here, updated with your comments from the meeting in early August, and we're here to go over it page by page, get your comments, get your edits.
Yeah, that would be my thought, that we start page by page and try to work our way through, because at the end of this period, we're gonna have a document that's gonna be a rather authoritative document, a strong philosophical document, and it's gonna be a roadmap for developers, for residents, for landowners, and everybody else. So I think we wanna make sure that we've got our input in before we convene the public to review.
Right.
So,
Were we expecting Mr. Blue to join us tonight?
I don't believe so.
I noticed in
Member
the cover it said we'd have Tesca's representatives will
Yeah, I'd
be here.
I thought they were, but, no, okay.
So honestly, as we start to edit this, we don't need them here for this. We have only so many meetings built in to our agreement with them, and so we're gonna save that. And so the idea of at this level, if there's a lot of edits, in fact, I'm gonna walk down and tying into the meeting and try to edit as we go. If there's comments, or if you have pages and pages and pages of comments.
For you to stay in the room.
If that's your preference, I can. We can rely on the record, but whatever you, I mean, that was my intent. I didn't know if there was a vast amount of edits to go through, or if people, what was your tolerance for how late you wanted to go as well? Yeah, so,
Well, I mean, we haven't even looked at the land use map.
yeah.
And you probably saw all my list of suggested changes to that. So you're just going to communicate with us over Zoom in response to those, or what?
I was gonna take edits from the copy from in front of you today.
Okay. Would you prefer that we go through the document first and then go to the map?
That would be preferable, yes. With that, I'll head down.
I guess, well, we'll start page 1, paragraph 1, introduction. The question that I had was the definition of sub-areas. I'm not sure it was in the document, I didn't see it, but it's a term that ought to be defined.
Yeah, I agree with you. I always felt that just having a generic term sub-area didn't mean anything. What they're really talking about, Tesca's talking about or suggesting, is potential redevelopment areas. It's a list of potential redevelopment areas, and I think it would be clearer to someone reading the document if we change those titles, wherever sub-area appears, to potential redevelopment areas. Just a simple clarification, because that's exactly what, once you start reading the document, that's what the sub-areas are. Sort of a strange term, I thought, to use.
Right, and I remember, Ann, I think you had asked about having a glossary, that they create a glossary that goes along with this, so that would be helpful.
All right, any other comments from page 1? Hearing none. Page 2. Well, I've got 3 or 4 proposed changes. I think the carryover paragraph, line 4, we have, when considering multifamily residential, I recommended including the word possible multifamily residential, commercial, and industrial. And then when I go down to bullet point 1, the last line, there's a term role in adding housing diversity, and my thought is in possibly adding housing diversity.
I think I'll say when in the meeting where we discussed this, there was a lot of additions of either the word explore or consider, and so I don't see that in this draft, right? When we discussed that when Mr. Blue was here.
Okay.
two months ago.
'Cause-
And so I don't know if that was just lost from that meeting, but I know there was a lot of discussion about putting in that kind of language about exploring and consider and, investigating and, et cetera.
Yes, as you know, Commissioner Toll, those terms are critical.
They are, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And I apologize for not being able to participate in that meeting, so I'm glad you addressed it. And thank you again for chairing it. Mike, what's best for you from going forward? I mean, I submitted my handwritten changes.
Yeah, right. Certainly, members are welcome to give us their handwritten notes, and so we don't have to, go over every comma or punctuation change, but we definitely want to talk about things that are, that are more worth discussing here as we go through this page by page.
Should we?
I would be in favor of doing the work to plow through the documents so we all reach a unanimous opinion. If it's strictly an edit, like a missed word,
A typo, yeah.
that we don't need to
Right.
find it and all agree on it. But if you think it's an important change, or even if it's a one-word change, then I say we take the time.
Right, the substantive.
To do it, so we all can say, yes, we talked about it, and the majority of us agree.
Right.
There are gonna be some items here where we may have a 4-3 vote, and so be it. That's,
Okay.
Right, well, to that end, on page 2, 2 lines from the bottom, soft density, how did we, I have written in here scale. I think that was one way we were talking about soft density. But is soft density the term we were trying to use? Aaron, to your point, I don't know whether that got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, I remember, I read the minutes, and we did address it in the minutes, or it was addressed in the minutes. I'm just trying to look at exactly how we wanted to make that change. Because I think we were all pretty offended by that.
And just a general comment, my thought is to maybe put a cutoff time of 10 o'clock if that's reasonable or unreasonable, but that's, I think, generally late enough.
For terms like soft density, we can, the comment earlier about having a glossary, kind of working terms, that we'll add that. I think it's a great add.
Okay. And then at that last bullet point on page 2, facilitate housing diversity that reflects, my thought is add the words diversity, comma, if appropriate, comma. As Aaron indicated, there's got to be latitude, and I don't think all this is going to be black and white, so to speak.
So what do you want to change it to?
Change it to facilitate housing diversity, comma, if appropriate, comma. That reflects.
Could you perhaps, how would you accept, your call, everybody, but the idea of maybe leading with that, saying where appropriate, facilitate.
Or at the end?
Either way.
In the middle? I think at the end, in my mind, makes sense.
Because, from my perspective, we can't lose sight of where we are, where we've been, and then be cautious.
Understood. And these bold statements are generalized statements. When you get level of specificity, I think that takes, you'll find greater specificity as you go deeper. But the idea that's an overriding, that's in response to the village's public comment and drive through the strategic plans to have diversified housing, right? And so the specificity comes, that's just a general bold statement. So it can be narrowed, more clear, but I think it gets narrow through the document elsewhere.
So perhaps in the layout of this, we need a subheader that with the fundamental planning goals that explains that this is high level. I want to make sure that when people look at this, I'm sure everybody will sit down and look at this in depth. that it is not alarming, it does not scare people, it should be open and inviting.
Well, there's a definition of a comprehensive plan that it was a 15 or 20-year.
At least, yes,
And
yeah.
That should be in the introduction. This is,
Yeah.
I mean, this is very similar to what we've done in the past. It's just more modernized.
Right.
Every comprehensive document has had diversity of housing. And has improving trails and better connections and more transportation. It's just modernizing it for, the current century.
I think that's right. And the idea of, where appropriate, you can put carefully facilitate. That achieves what I think everybody's talking about here too, so. Good adverb.
And I did find in the notes where we talked about gentle density in the minutes, sorry. And there were several concerns about that term. Well, it was gentle density in our previous draft, and now it's soft density, so.
Same comment.
Lateral move.
Same comment.
So, and in the minutes, the discussion, we went to a point of saying flexibility instead of trying to encourage this gentle or soft density. Just an awareness of being flexible and so then to see gentle turn to soft. It's
abomination, isn't it? But I think that's good language for like the dictionary of this. It's like, hey, this is a struggle. We, like telling this story. I think that's helpful. So I think that's great.
So what are we doing, soft? Gentle?
All of that. I think, yes. Yeah. I've gotten all those, snuggles, all of it. But I think the idea of the struggle with that word to describe, that's part of this story.
What I don't want is for residents or developers to come and read our comprehensive plan and that's their first instinct is to say, all right, we're going to turn a single family home into a duplex. Yeah. I want them to be able to maybe have that idea in their head, but I don't want us to be proposing that in this comprehensive plan. Does that make sense?
I absolutely concur, and I have a lot of notes through the document along those lines. It almost seems like there's always this message of we're going to diversify single-family housing. It's not, if appropriate, it's we're going to do it. And we've some of us at least have sat through arguments over development of property where the attorneys come up and read this language, and some of the stuff reads like it's going to be a statement of fact, and it may not be. So I think that's the concern.
Yes.
No, and I think I said here not too long ago about the idea that some comp plans say nothing but this, we don't want to do this. That's one of those statements. I've written that down. This is not an opening of a floodgate. This is not that. So that's what this comp plan is going to say.
Yeah, I'm a proponent like Adam and Aaron and George about being very, very cautious with the word choice. Page 3.
We're flying.
The first bullet point at the top, instead of saying mainly residential community, I thought it should say mainly single-family residential, because that's what we are. Very first bullet point, first line.
Got it.
It does mention that in the less bold text.
It does. Yeah. I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just moving forward with this, it'll be shown as a red line so you can see the changes. Easier to track.
The middle bullet point pertains to tonight. ensure institutional, commercial, residential development relates to its respective neighborhood through scale, location, intensity, landscaping, and so forth. I think that's real pertinent to our discussion tonight.
Yeah, following up on that bullet point, second to last line, we talk about to manage impacts. My thought is to manage potential adverse impacts. And then in the next bullet point, line 3, after wetlands, my thought is to add the term the public golf course. Just to crystallize its importance. And then in the last bullet point, we talk about line 3, built assets. It seems like that would be man-made assets.
I think that's sometimes true, not always true. Like the beach is an asset that we may do things to protect it, but it's not, it's a natural asset.
Okay. Maybe we have to define built.
Maintain and build upon, make sure I'm reading the same thing you are. Maintain and build upon Lake Bluff's unique assets through placemaking and infrastructure improvements to assure a strong quality of place.
The next sentence, Lake Bluff's natural and built assets, right?
Are spread throughout the community, yeah.
Yeah, I just found the term to be a little bit confusing.
Yeah, it could be man-made instead.
Yeah, I mean, like Artesian Park, Blair Park, the pool, the golf course, whatever, those assets built.
Goes in the glossary.
I'm sorry?
Goes in the glossary. Built assets. Make sure you mark that specifically. Thank you.
What about pickleball?
A great example.
Okay. Anything on page 4? Any recommendations?
Nope.
I was just thinking on the second bullet down there, organize new residential areas. Any reason not to just, new and older residential areas if somebody comes up with a way to connect older residential areas, I'd be open to that, but.
That's a good one. New and existing?
I thought the bullet below that is meant to address that. I mean, it's
Okay.
that's the intent, is that when you do it new, but also if you can find something in the existing network that we should build on to improve, then do so. Unless you think that's not strong enough.
I didn't make the connection, but it's fine.
That's the intent of the section, so I'll see if there's clarity to be offered there.
Yeah.
Page 5 or page 7? Well,
I actually I'll introduce it now because I questioned it all the way through the last edit. It's the sub-area of saying the Route 41-176 commercial corridor in the singular. When you get back to the breakdown, we actually do, there's a Route 41 commercial corridor that extends primarily to the north. And then there's the Route 176 corridor commercial corridor from the railroad tracks out west. And they really are two different areas, and we actually talk about them separately in some of the exhibits in the back. But yet we always use the term as if it's one corridor, and it just strikes me funny. because they are two areas. And we exhibit them as two areas.
So if you
They're
put
two
an S
different
at the,
corridors.
you put an S at the end of it?
Oh, in the contents, yes. And then, but later on, we use the term and it just doesn't,
But just continue to refer as multiple corridors. Yeah.
yeah, whatever. It
No,
just-
it's easy, that's easy, yeah. Yep.
Right.
Generally speaking, to the table of contents in terms of expectation, obviously, is this what you were expecting? Was there other things that you expected more, I guess, time spent on?
Nope, we did add the beef up a little bit with the infrastructure, because that was, there's a dramatic difference between this plan and the
Prior plan?
the existing plan in
Yeah.
terms of
Time spent on it, yeah.
the emphasis on improving infrastructure. And we can't forget about it. There are
Right.
things happening below the surface that need attention.
For certain.
But paragraphs were added
Yeah.
in this new document, so that was a good thing.
Well, from my perspective, I'll just pass over some minor grammatical changes that, in the copy that I gave to Mike, you guys can work your way through.
Okay.
Page 8.
Well, so this is where we have the existing land use map, and we really can't even read it. Is the intention, I mean, what is the intention in the document? Are you, do you want us to go through this? Because there are definitely errors in it, but it's very hard to mark up this 5x5 print. I mean, we did get a larger copy of the future land use map. I mean, what is the real intention here? You're just gonna roll with Tesca's errors? Like through the document,
I think the
they've
answer is
combined,
no.
they've combined the Litzinger property with the Stonebridge property all the way through. They think it's this, they don't realize there's a separate 9-acre single-family estate. It's shown, in a very small highlight here.
Yeah.
But just
We've
just
talked
as
about
an
that,
example,
yeah.
There's, the Crabtree Farm areas are all mixed up with where the houses are, and, what's the purpose of having the exhibit if it's got, 15 different errors in it?
Well,
We can't sit
to
here and
your
go through
point-
it, but I think the staff with a big map could go through and do that. We should, we should.
Yeah,
have to do
that's going to, understood, agreed, that will happen. Do you guys want the existing land use, the large versions of those as well?
This one?
That's the future? Do you want the existing?
All right.
We can get you if you want them. I mean, it's,
It'd be helpful just to
yeah,
compare. Just to compare.
I'd want it, so, yeah, yeah. If I were you, yeah.
Get like an 8-foot by 10-foot.
Yeah, and a large zoning map as well, wouldn't you? I mean, the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they really need to be a resolution where we can read them, it doesn't help that much when they're bigger.
Would you talk to the staff liaison about that for this group?
Yeah.
Can you make it topographical too while you're at it?
We can.
Thank you.
Oh. Been out in Colorado too much, Ian. Not much variance here. All right. Anything else on pages 8 or 9?
Can I just ask a question? Is Walnut part of CBD?
Walnut is on the west side of Walnut between North and Scranton is, on the east side is R5.
Okay. Does that need to then, be pulled out in place or anything?
Hard to tell.
I'm good all the way up to page 13.
Oh, George.
Wow.
I just have one comment on 11. At the very last line, after community, I thought, comma, and in Crabtree Farms.
This on page 11,
Yeah, bottom of page 11.
conservation areas.
Right. I'm fine with. 13. Any comments on 13?
So 13 is where I have a lot of heartache, and it comes down to one of the really big discussions that we've been kicking around. And it's the infill housing question. And the Malm and Rockland Avenue proposal is a suggestion, example of that.
Yeah.
As a resident, a 30-year resident, I'm completely convinced that a vast majority of the residents do not want infill residential mix, or whatever we're gonna call it, housing. I think on the new land use map, the old one had, next to residential, it had duplex, triplex, and now this one has duplex, triplex, quadplex. And so it's got, the designation that all of Malman Avenue, except for the last block, and the east half of Rockland Avenue, a recommended change to this what the new term residential mix zoning. I'm just of the opinion that most residents don't want to see that happen. We have a lot of, we list all these larger parcels in the village where we have the opportunity to create different housing types, the 10 acres, Stonebridge, the Block 3, maybe not the 22 units that Opticos wants or suggested in the heavy density, but maybe it's 12. But it is an opportunity where, other than single family, housing can be developed. The very far north end of the train lot, out in the industrial park, I think that's a wonderful idea that Mickey Collins brought forward 3 or 4 months ago, and it's been picked up in the plan to consider the north end of the business park to allow for the introduction of multifamily housing out there. But that is, and the Quigley estate. That those are opportunities where you can introduce this type of housing and not directly impact the people and the residents immediately adjacent to these parcels, because they're big enough. You can have landscape borders, and you can, come up with a density that's acceptable, that would not impact the way someone is going to be impacted if somewhere on, the corner of Main and Malman, you use the Opticos numbers, we can put a quadplex on the lot where there's currently a single-family house on the southwest corner. Do the residents that live along there and all those single-family homes want that? I think the vote would be 95 to 5. In terms of percentage, they don't. And it's a constant thrust through this document to consider that. And and the community's gonna have to decide. But I don't think it works for the community, and that's just my own opinion. Infill development where isolated lots in any of the established single-family districts.
So George, would you be more comfortable with it if we just eliminated the single-family portion of that?
What do you?
In this where it says expanding single-family and multifamily residential districts to accommodate diverse housing types. If we just eliminated the single-family in that line.
Well, I redrafted the whole page.
Oh, okay, never mind.
But the concept, if the group doesn't agree, if at least four of us three others don't agree with me about this concept of infill housing, then I'll accept it. But we need to have, I mean, how does everyone else feel about the concept of the lot next to yours becoming a duplex or a triplex?
I have a question. This infill housing, is this, this middle housing, we've been talking about how much?
Soft density, yeah.
Yeah, a year now when we brought the consultants in, it's been like that. Is that gonna be a state requirement for comprehensive plans? Or is this like the Lake Bluff image thing that we want to portray, that we're open to middle housing or complex or quad housing and stuff like that?
Yeah, Mike, if you're trying. So to answer your question, Member Miller, the village's investment in that firm to study missing middle housing was to be responsive to the last two strategic plans that the village has done that's been resident-driven, that says you need more diversified housing product type. And I think Member Russell's point is, where would that go? And these are all the right questions. But the single mission that was to be had was to have a community conversation around that, missing middle. And that's what part of bringing the consultant in and studying this and finding out where this weaves into the village's long-range plan. And the ultimate goal is to have the village's land use plan and its zoning code marry together so you can get what you want, where you want. So
I think the key is where you want.
And that's what Mr. Russell is talking about now, where. And so the consultant came to this very broadly in saying the village should open its eyes and look at where this type of housing occurs elsewhere successfully. And that's where they have this national lens that they've said this is where it's worked. Look, even on the North Shore, it's happening just south to us in Lake Forest and Highland Park and other places. But to Member Russell's point is maybe their view is more aggressive than we want to be. And maybe in this version of the comp plan, maybe the next 20-year plan is different. But for at least for now, he's suggesting it would be more narrow. And Mike, I was hoping to see the map, not necessarily the.
Because if you look at
the
Lake
future
Forest.
land use map?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you look at Lake Forest or Highland Park, they're not infilling neighborhoods, they're infilling the downtowns.
Most of it's occurring, it's like, I would call it TOD, like transit-oriented development, near the railroad tracks, close to the downtown, right? The village has R4 zoning abutting its central business district.
Correct.
Right? Detached single family. So they have more land area to do better transitions.
Which puts us in a little bit of a different
tougher spot, yes. So the idea is, and what Opticos has encouraged the village to do, is consider doing that in places, because you can do it in a way that is so subtle that you wouldn't know that it's a multifamily.
Unless you're a neighbor of it, then it maybe is not so subtle.
Yeah, but there's examples of that occurring in the village for years in other locations. So there's examples of it, and that was their point, is saying, be open to that. And when we first had this conversation, we said, I think the initial conversation was the village should focus on doing this in the central business district and the R5, where it's always had or considered and allowed multifamily. And they said, think broader, think wider, and that's how I think it's ended up in maybe the Stonebridge property or the other undeveloped land areas in the community. And I think what you're saying is not so.
Those are fine.
Those are okay.
But
but reduce.
An isolated, the first, the Opticos report that I get so upset with had the entire R4 districts.
Yeah.
It was the entire east side, Malman, Rockland, on the other side of the tracks, also R4,
Yeah.
where you could you could infill any lot.
Yeah.
And if the numbers worked, up to a quadplex.
I'm sorry, this is not helpful. Can you bring up like a Google Earth map of the Montessori school on the other side of the tracks?
Yeah, I would echo Member Russell's concerns on that particular issue.
Yeah.
Can I just can I kind of play devil's advocate just a little bit in terms of 20 years going forward? I think people are looking for smaller. I mean, I think the inclination is going to be a mix of smaller and everything, but I don't, what I see for duplex, maybe it's not quad and triplex and stuff, but maybe it's duplex. I mean, on Scranton, on the south side of Scranton, 2 houses from Evanston, there's a duplex, it's still there. Doesn't look any bit different from a single family. I think of a couple of those ones along McKinley Road in Lake Forest where white colonial. You walk in and there's actually two vertical, townhouses. I don't think it looks any different and such. So would I be upset if my neighbor wanted to do that? I don't think so, Pardon?
A duplex.
Right, but still multi-family.
But you are at the very house you cited on Scranton Avenue, you realize there was a tremendous uproar with the neighbor and a long, ugly fight about
Over the
intensity of
driveway.
use over the driveway. But
Right.
when you have a duplex, on average, you will have more cars, you will
Okay.
have more paved surfaces, and you will have more people on average, and you will have less trees. It just, on average, and you will never convince me of that, Deb, otherwise. It is more intensity, and I just don't think that it's right for our village when we have, I would say, if we take these list of 8 or 9 larger areas, and maybe even the far north end of the train lot, not where it's drawn by Tesca, we could create 200 available units before we even start eating away at the thought of changing the character of our village. I mean, that is the very first goal listed, is to maintain the high standards of appearance. Lake Bluff's quiet and picturesque neighborhoods are a defining factor in what makes the village a desirable and unique community. And
Yeah, I guess
I've talked enough, but I mean, we need to move it forward.
Right.
We need to reach a consensus, and we
Right.
may not agree, and if
No,
we
and
don't,
And I guess I maybe pull in from the strategic plan, which had big groups of people too, that seemed to be more open to it. Then this, I see there's not consensus even between those, so I hear what you're saying. I'm not arguing, I'm just trying to,
I mean, Art, in
Look
Block
toward-
3, I don't want it to be single family. I'd like to see it be, like 12, something reasonable, like 12 units, not 22, with 12 parking spaces, which is what Opticos has,
right.
It just, those numbers just don't make sense.
Right.
With the problems that
Okay,
they'll
well, I just
cause.
wanted to throw that out there because.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying about the appearance if it's done
Yeah, the scale to me is
in the
huge.
scale.
Right.
But I also know when a developer buys a piece of property, the first thing they do, because I had that job for 25 years, is they come in and they want to know exactly how many square feet they can squeeze
fair.
out of it. It's squeezing blood from a turnip, as they say.
Right, okay.
And how high can I go? How wide can I go?
Right.
How deep can I go? And if you change it to allowing duplex and these other numbers and get rid of half of our regulations, like Opticos is recommending, that list is really scary.
Okay.
It would, I mean, it wouldn't last long, and there would be an uproar, and we'd have, just like when the bulk regulations first came into effect, if you were living here in the early 90s, when the first big few large homes started being built with the really high walls right next to the property lines. And there was a big uproar in the community, and we had to develop the regulations to control it. And I predict that's what would happen if we opened the door to duplex development
Okay.
in all of our single-family districts. Just my opinion.
Okay, I'm going to throw out a dissenting opinion. And partly because I really have been playing with this now for a few years purposefully and looking at other places and other communities and how things are done. And I don't love density. I don't
Moving
love
to
density.
Colorado.
I don't love density, and I'm very, very aware of that sticking point for me. That said, I have seen some beautifully done duplexes or, multi-residential places in the middle of towns and communities, and I don't disagree with that. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for someone who maybe is single or a young family or somebody who doesn't want the huge maintenance of a single property themselves. I think that the overarching issue for me right now is that we've had not one but 2 strategic plans running where this has been something that is a stated goal of the village. And I think in part it's our responsibility to listen to that goal too, and help to find a way and help to ease a path where that may be a possibility. Not necessarily all the time. You know, we value our trees, we value some lawn, we value some space. But I think that we have to leave it open, because there may be someone who can do it well, and it's economically viable to do it well.
But you still have to develop the set of regulations that would apply equally across the board. I mean, you can't pick and choose because you like a particular architect.
No.
I mean,
That's not at all my argument.
You know, so it's the question of implementing it, and I don't see how it can be implemented without severe damage to the current character of the village, and I don't know why we need to do it when we have these opportunities, the Block 3. But you see, when the developers come in, oh no, we can't just do a 2-story, 12-unit development. We've got to do the 3-story monster with the wall. You know, then the neighbors on North have this 3-story wall in their backyards. That's just the reality of the situation.
I hear that.
So
also something different could happen. I think we have to remain open to possibility.
The question is, how do you control it?
I was present for not all of the strategic planning meetings, but a couple of them. And I think there was a definite desire from the residents, and we need to be responsive to them, of having other options than single family. But, you know, I think we didn't give the option of saying, hey, we have these sites that we can do this on, or should we replace our single family housing with these, right? I mean, to George's point, we've got opportunity. Why do we need to push the idea of transforming single family into something else when we have other opportunities that we should exhaust first, right? And so in these strategic plannings, yes, there was the desire to have condos and other options. I don't remember, and I wasn't at all of them, so I apologize, but I didn't get the impression that they would like to see their single-family home transformed into something else. They wanted the option, but I think if we gave them that option into these opportunities, then that would satisfy that desire by the residents who were involved to have other options than single-family. Does that make sense?
It does, although I'm wary of guessing what people's motivations are across the board like that.
Oh, I would never assume to know, but
Yeah.
you know, in the conversations I was involved with, it was kind of like, do you want housing? Do you want options other than single family? Well, yeah, of course, we all do.
Right.
Okay, what does that look like? I don't think there was the specific of.
We didn't dive.
We didn't dive in, right? It was a desire to have options, but then we didn't say, okay, well, you know what? We're gonna bring it into the single family neighborhoods and change your next door neighbor to a duplex. And that's where we're gonna start. And I can guarantee you, a lot of those people who said, yes, I wanna move into a condo, would say, absolutely not. Do not turn my neighbor into a duplex or a quad, right? So we can be responsive to the residents and their opinions of wanting options other than single family homes, but I agree with George. I don't think that means that we need to introduce transforming what we have already stated is what makes Lake Bluff into something for the future, whatever that might be.
What if you added to the end of that, in the appropriate setting?
I think it does actually spell out, you know, it says in the following paragraph under the blue text, such locations include residential areas near the central business district and metro station, and as part of developing vacant properties with access to village trails and other amenities. That's exactly what we're talking about, right? So I think if we can dial in that first paragraph where it says expanding single-family and multifamily residential districts to accommodate diverse housing types, I mean, that sounds like we're almost doing it in the entire village. But then we qualify that in the following paragraph by saying such locations. I almost want to say maybe we just state the specific locations instead of talking about expanding single-family districts to accommodate diverse housing.
Or just leave that out. The
We'll just
single
leave that
family,
out.
leave the single family district out.
And I wasn't implying doing it all, universally across the town or anything. I just,
Well, I think,
So, if I may, is that all right? Yeah. So, I haven't heard no against CBD location or R5 or new PRD greenfields. So it's really the R4 area we're talking about, or R3, depending on where you're looking. But the idea is maybe that's something we put a pin in, and as we go through this, somebody says, I think this lot, or like, I'm not saying this is an answer, but like where the Montessori school is, maybe that's a place that's different, not the rest of Malmö, just where the Montessori school is. In the future, maybe that could be a site. So maybe that's worded in a way that is, consider examining this for further, appropriateness for multifamily. Something that's, set over here and say, these areas we're comfortable in, these areas we're thinking about it, and these are, the rest we're not going to talk about right now. I mean, you can kind of have those three different buckets, if you will.
It's always been the village, and this planning commission is always this diverse housing. It's always come up, it's always watered down, which is probably needs to be, but it's the same discussions over the years. We can't be specific. We have to be general. I think utilizing areas that are outside or areas that are appropriate for putting these multiple type housing units in is something that we should maybe word it as such and leave the single family aspect out of it.
Is the
I
Montessori
mean, if the
school
Montessori
property in
school
play?
closed,
Yeah.
I would be open to a discussion of multifamily development on that parcel, providing the parking situations, I don't know where that's evolving to.
Is it closing?
We do have a resident from Malmö here.
I doubt it.
Do you have a difference of opinion between?
I think it's doing really well.
Do you have a difference of opinion between allowing infill along all of Malmö versus leaving the door
Focus group
open
of
for
one.
the?
Please.
I mean, a larger group, if our whole neighborhood's blocked out. It should be all over town and not just one neighborhood. If you want duplexes, it's all over town. You don't designate one whole neighborhood to just turn into a duplex area because you're destroying the neighborhood.
and are you referring to Malmö?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's, it just, like, it's pretty yellow and bold there. So if people want it, I agree. Let's ask the neighbors, do you want it in your neighborhood if you're going to change the zoning? And I guarantee you, people aren't going to want it. They're not going to want to move. Someone's going to come in and offer them a ton of money to build a multi-unit, and then it's not going to be cheap enough for the people who want the condominiums, because you can't get property values here, and building values are just too high. So if we're trying to get to condos, look what happened with Block 1 or whatever. Those were not the kind of condos. It's like, let's go buy a condo in Lake Forest, because we want to downsize, and it's over $1 million. So it's cheaper to stay in your home and die in your home right now, because you can't change property unless you're a younger person with a huge salary. So it just doesn't make sense to go after one whole neighborhood.
right, no, I agree with that. I mean, I was talking infill, like scattered around, not a strip.
But, that would require some sort of special use permit in the underlying zoning, right? Which we can already do. We can already do that.
Right.
So to start changing the zoning to allow for that by right.
Right.
In some of these areas, I think would be a mistake.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Mm-hmm.
So where are we at with this?
I'd like to hear George's
Well,
redraft.
basically what you suggested is more or less what I did. It's starting with the sentence, in terms of land use, the relevant matter is to consider expanding single family. I get rid of those whole 5 lines because the inference was, to me, that reads like the inference is, let's consider this. The rest of it I just sort of rewrote to list out all these other opportunities. I expanded upon, these 6 different areas we're looking at that could you know, without overdevelopment, result in 200 units if they were all developed. If you follow Opticos's plan, it would be 400 units. But I just think the opportunities are there. So
Without messing with this.
without messing with single family.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I would agree also.
All right. Page 14? No. Now, obviously, there's a lot of dominoes that fall behind that, right?
Yes, through the rest of the
Yeah.
document, so.
Yes.
Starting with the exhibit on the very next page, which I crossed out.
I feel like didn't we already make our opinions known on a lot of this in discussions with Opticos and Tesco?
I don't know if you've had this conversation yet. I think there was some general hand-wringing that happened, but I don't think the conversation has been had.
Okay.
But that's what the strategic plan called for, to have a conversation, a community conversation about it. So you're answering the bell. And all other sports analogies I can throw in. You know, and honestly, there's enough, we should spend some time working on that, because there's a lot of scrubbing with that. If you're looking for a good place to stop, that's a great place to stop.
Yeah, well, in terms of that same issue, I
Yeah.
know we spent a little bit of time on the maps that they had presented the last time out along the 176 corridor, not the 41 corridor.
Right,
It's
right.
not the same thing, on page 17, where I thought there was a consensus of opinion that we really shouldn't propose a
Residential on the north side.
multifamily unit right at
Yep.
176 and 43.
Yeah.
I know, and you know,
Yep.
that could be a 10-lane cross-section in 5 years.
Yep.
And then anywhere right along Highway 41, I mean, that's a US highway. They had these other cartoon drawings, and sometimes they just arbitrarily put the detention pond in the back and the residential development right along the highway. So I just went through and flip them, but why do we want to encourage the construction of, or even infer that we would want residential housing built right along the edge of 41 anywhere, when we know 5 years after it's built, the residents are going to be knocking on the door asking for a big sound wall? I mean, when you have these drawings, why not flip it? And I understand they're all conceptual, but why have the concept draw it with the residences in the front and the open space in the back? To me, it doesn't make sense. So, I mean, a lot of my comments, but otherwise I support, you know, Mickey
That
Collins'
location,
whole idea.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, and even
Yeah.
in the middle, units on the top, mixed-use development.
And you can easily draw it the other way as you describe. I think it's just because it's a cartoon drawing, right? That's the idea.
Right.
But I understand your point. Yeah.
On page 16, I have a comment. I noticed the north boundary of the 41-176 commercial corridor is at Washington Avenue on the east side of 41 there. And I don't know why they chose it there. Yeah, I think it should
Yeah,
go all the way up as
That was to my
George.
point earlier, the 41 corridor. We have property up there, and we have
Right.
potential properties that could be, you know, that motel
Right.
owner has been wanting to
Do something.
sell.
Yeah.
You know, the answer to our issue with affordable housing, the mobile home park, and connecting them to our water supply. The 41 corridor there's a lot of issues there, and the whole north end of it kind of disappeared out of Tesca's plan because they lumped the two corridors together for reasons that I don't understand.
And George, do you recall what on that, on this one that has the 176-43, were we saying retail where they currently have multifamily residential right on the corner?
What page is that, Deb? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, 17. Page 17, where we didn't want multifamily right there on that busy intersection and stuff. That was, we were saying more retail, was it there?
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
So do you think we should separate the 41 and 176 and do two separate sub-areas for that?
That would be my suggestion, because when you go to the breakdown anyway, there's separate discussions on them and separate exhibits, and we need to capture the whole north end of Highway 41 that got lost in the discussion.
Can I go back to that comment that Member Fisher made about the residential commercial on that northwest corner of 41 and 176 on page 17? I didn't remember that specific comment about not having.
Yeah, I thought we talked about that it was too busy to try to have multifamily there.
Wait, are we talking Waukegan and?
Yeah,
176.
43 and 176.
Waukegan,
not
yes,
41.
but I'm talking 41, 176, not northwest quadrant.
41.
It already is.
It's on
I'm
page
sorry.
18.
Which page are you on?
17?
That's
Yeah.
Waukegan.
Yeah, well, they
That's
17.
Waukegan,
They
not
kind of did it right
41.
there. They put the detention out by Highway 41, and they put
Yeah.
the, but you're questioning whether
On the
we
far
were-
right side of the drawing, on page 17, it shows.
Oh, okay, I was talking about the
Yeah, yeah,
left
no,
side.
yep.
Sorry, I was talking left side at
Yep.
176 in Waukegan.
So you're talking, okay, left, yes, then I agree, yes, that was described, yep. Okay, all right, got it. All right. I'm gonna buy some more erasers. Any other high-level
One other
comments?
housing-related issue is
Yeah.
that I really wanted to report on today since I went to the train lot the last 2 days. You know, this exhibit on page 23.
Busy train lot.
Where the,
Yeah.
where the multifamily use building is set right opposite Washington Avenue, and the way it just scales, but all these drawings matter to me. You know, it would eliminate approximately 17 parking spaces from our main parking area where we have the 3 bays, you know, the big U-shaped circulation. If this plan was implemented in any fashion similar to as it's drawn here today, at noon, we would have a deficit of 25 cars. 25 automobiles would not have been able to park in our parking lot. Our train lot would have had that kind of deficit. Just because train usage has been down the last 2 years after COVID doesn't mean that it's not going to eventually come back. And we hear comment after comment, and I like some of those discussions. One of the things I liked about Opticos was the idea of, if there was a multifamily new building on the corner of North and Sheridan, that you could take advantage of the parking across the street in the train lot, but we can't constantly go to the well. Once we give away the train lot parking and build a big building there in the middle of it, we're goners. And we were 25 parking spaces in the hole today, if the building had been there, not even counting what parking needs of the building itself. So it's not this big giant space that people are envisioning it to be. And we need it every day. You can't just have people show up on a Wednesday at noon if some of them are parking there and going to the restaurants, and they can't. I'd rather have the multifamily shift all the way down to the north end and preserve all that parking and use it for the, if some of those smaller existing multifamily buildings redevelop in the R5, because there are a lot of very small, older ones that could become 2-story.
True.
And if we don't have to have parking on site and they can use the parking across the street, then there's an opportunity there to take it from a 3-unit to a 6-unit and have them be brand new instead of 70 years old, or whatever they are. But we won't have that opportunity if we give it all away. Those are the numbers today. 25 cars with no places to park.
To that point, Mr. Russell, I think on page 67, there's just there's like a handful of two paragraphs and a couple of bullet points dealing with parking. I would, if you guys are comfortable with, I like to bring back, there was an exhibit we showed that's in the parking study the village showed, like these are like in case of dire emergency, these are some places we could have future parking lots. And the idea that that's come up from time to time, that when I've been here, I know it was true when you were here, George, the idea of where else can we find places for parking? It'd be nice to have that identified in the comp plan, you know, whether it's at the end of Walnut, this is not, I dare say it, but like at the Walnut North, there's a surface lot there. Is that the highest and best use of the property? There's some changes in grade there. What else can be done? The village owns the Walnut property. What else could be happening? You know, there's opportunities there. There's opportunities along Sheridan Road. We've talked about that. There's places for parking. So having ideas about where those could go next to the library, you know, that's been talked about. That was in Teska's 1998 study.
The Klitschko House?
Yeah, that was identified, yeah. It's come up, and I think it didn't end up in the plan before.
Don't turn it
But
into
the
a
idea,
duplex, though. Into a parking lot.
but the idea of have a conversation about, right? So,
Fuskas didn't like that idea.
I'm just trying to point out the
remember, yeah,
reality.
yeah.
I'm just trying to point out the reality of that gigantic parking surplus that we think is there in the train lot. It's not there on certain days.
I agree.
And that's a dangerous road to go down when we want to keep looking to the train lot. You know, when we look at Block 3 and we've got a proposal for 22 units and 12 parking spaces on site, where are those other 20 cars going to go? And the answer would be, oh, we'll put them up at the train lot. It just, the buckets can be overflowing very quickly. So we need to guard against that.
Plus, I might have to walk an extra block.
No, well, more than that, because there's no parking, you know. We'll have to park down in Lake Forest, I guess, I don't know. Or in front of your house on,
I guess in front of my
Woodland,
house,
yeah.
or your house, yeah.
What page are we on?
We're going back.
I thought we were closing the book.
Yeah, I thought we were, yeah.
Yeah. Is there any other high-level comments? I think there's a lot of rewriting that's gonna need to be done, so. If there's other high-level comments, happy to receive those and give a shot.
You want to bounce around through the document, Drew, or?
Shoot, yeah.
I mean, the 10-acre property to the west of the terraces, I think has to be approached in a rather gingerly manner. I'm worried about the adverse impact.
Your page, sir, please, I'm sorry.
Oh, I think I'm working on around page 27. Let's see. 27, 28. The possible expansion or extension of Thornwood Lane and Prospect Avenue going into the 10-acre lot. I mean, I think that would destroy the West Terrace if you had that increased traffic coming through there from whatever is perceived to occur, possibly occur, as far as new residential. From my perspective, any and all traffic out of that 10 acres has got to go back out around Jawa. You know, the people in the West Terrace are used to having relatively quiet, limited traffic, just pure residential from their neighborhoods. But if you opened up with 70 new houses or whatever onto Thornwood or onto Prospect, that would be of grave concern to me. If there was, you know, bicycle traffic or whatever, that's a different deal, or foot traffic. But I think we have to be very, very cautious there.
Yeah, I had the very same comment written here in red. It changes the neighborhood dramatically, especially if it starts offering cut-through possibilities from Green Bay to 176. Here you have these three streets that are essentially dead-end streets, very, very low limited traffic. It is gonna, and it's just written here about, oh, let's do this. If when we develop this, let's do this. So there's no, I don't think there's a question mark in here about how, what kind of impact does it have on the neighbors over there? And,
Would
it's the old Sam Badger comment on Blodgett Avenue.
Yep.
Sam, a former member, lived on Blodgett. And
When
one
George,
day,
when
as
George
he-
was proposing the
one
West
day
Blodgett.
Drew proposed that West Blodgett be built all the way through from Sheridan Road to Green Bay.
And that great crossing, the village
Sam-
desperately needs.
Sam almost jumped out of his chair.
Club me to death, yeah.
Would that development, though, need 2 points of egress?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, think about, like, Tingley Oaks has one at the point.
It does, yeah.
So I think just good planning principle says that the ability to have multiple access points distributes the traffic loads much
Right.
more, less intensely.
Right.
So it's good planning to have multiple points. And I think that's when Opticos came through, they showed that, and they said, it doesn't have to be both, but one would be nice.
Yeah.
So, but that's something that for, the concerns about it, it doesn't have to be assumed that it will happen. You can say, carefully study this if something happens there.
Yeah, I think at least that language has to be in there. I mean, it's the same battle we went through on Stonebridge with the neighbors in the south end of the West Terrace where, the original proposal, the developer was just open this up and
Yep.
then you've got 80 homes potentially traveling through other streets that don't have any through traffic, and it ended up being an emergency entrance. And yeah, I understand from a planning principle, if we were laying out the whole town from scratch, the end of these 3 streets at the north end would connect right through, like it was laid out originally.
Like it is.
Now you've got
Sidewalk's still there.
a neighborhood that's well established with people living there for decades and decades in some cases, and you're gonna open up a potential connector from 176 to Green Bay right through the front of their home. It has to be done carefully.
Yeah, I think we have to look at the potential impact on the street to the far south and the terrace that's right along Stonebridge. I think there was a comment in here about a boulevard or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't think we can increase vehicular traffic
Yeah, page
in
27.
there.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, on Stonebridge, has there ever been conversation about sort of the Tangley Oaks approach where not just pure single-family, but bringing back something, maybe boutique hotel, small hotel houses around, or sort of the Tangley Oaks with commercial right in the center and houses around?
How about a private club with a farm?
Well, I'm just
who
thinking
knows?
to
Yeah.
minimize traffic and such, there might be less. I don't know. Has that ever, or is it purely single-family?
The closest that, or concept that was examined was the current owner, Peter Kite and Roanoke Group. They looked at having the manor when it was still being explored. Can they keep the manor?
Sort of the Harrison House approach.
And see if they can make it a special event place. And their study of that, the financial models, the number of events that they would have to pencil out would be such a detriment to the neighborhood. They said it's not going to happen.
Okay, so it wasn't just because of the expense of the old building? Okay,
It was just the intensity of use was pushing that the wrong way for the neighborhood.
okay, thank you.
Well, they were thinking of condos for that as well, right?
The original development had, the manor was up to, I can't remember if it was up to 12 or 9, and then the gatehouse was also to have condos as well,
Right.
with subterranean parking under the manor.
Great concept.
In a wetland.
Look at page 32 and Lake Bluff open spaces, and there's reference to the SMC flood mitigation project. I think we have to be very, very cautious there as to the wording, because from my perspective, that was a totally misguided initiative that wreaked havoc on the community. So I included for Mike some proposed changes, that you can digest at your leisure. But to do anything to encourage the possible destruction of the golf course for stormwater seems to be totally misguided.
Okay.
And then somewhere toward the latter part, Drew, there was a comment about possibly expanding the FAR. And I thought, I'm not sure that, in other words, loosening the FAR, which I thought was a troubling comment. Because I think the FAR has served the community very, very well.
Where was that? I don't remember.
I've got to find that, Elliot.
Yeah, I don't
It was
remember
toward the end.
Yeah, it was somewhere under the housing. I remember that.
Probably having to do with ADUs, if I had to guess.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right, it was the ADU thing. Maybe changing that on the ADUs rather than the stuff.
Yeah, ADUs are 49, page 49. Is it 55?
Remove the regulatory barriers for the ADUs, maybe you're looking at?
No, I think that might have been a separate comment.
That was meeting setback and bulk.
Historic? Let's see.
I'll search the document and find it.
Yeah, it's all, oh, yeah, it is page 55. Last two lines on the second to last subsection.
Consider allowing higher FAR. Under historic preservation.
That was historic though, right?
Can we kind of accommodate for historic?
Yes, there's bonuses, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was language in there that said initiate bonuses, and I had marked that up too, that there are some bonuses already, and they ought, you know, at least acknowledge that as part of any recommendation.
Well, this says for non-landmark buildings. Making the distinction.
But there are bonus provisions for older homes
I think you have to be a landmark.
with first floor. Older homes, homes that are older than X number of years, Mike, it's got a lot of the older homes had higher first floors. And don't we give an allowance automatically for any home that's older than 50 years old or before 19?
That's about essentially counting the basement. The first floor can be 5 feet out of the ground instead of 3 feet out of the
Right.
ground if you're before, I think, 1960.
Whatever the years
Yeah,
were. So there is
right.
something, but
Right.
I'm thinking of the recent incentive package, which includes property tax rebates and no-fee building permits for landmarks.
Right.
I think there's additional zoning considerations, softer zoning for relief. And again, but that's for landmarks, and this is talking about, the distinction is non-landmark existing buildings. So I think it's expanding incentives to maintain structures, whether they're landmarked or not, with the idea of repurposing, encouraging reuse rather than demolish and rebuilding.
yeah, I guess if we all have smaller individual comments, we should turn them in to try and get a better,
Bring 'em,
cleaner
yeah.
draft. And
Yep.
I know maybe I just missed the project, but, because I know I marked it up very clearly in the last packet I turned in about, there's a statement, the public way within Lilliandale's Drive Ravine was recently utilized for a recent storm sewer project providing relief to much of the eastern portion of Lake Bluff. I'm assuming that's the project that may happen in 5 years, not. Okay, yeah,
Aspirational, yeah.
All right, I'll just mark it,
Yep.
I marked it up
Yep.
again.
Should we propose maybe a 2-week time frame to submit your personal recommendations or suggestions?
That's fine.
You know,
Or if you have them, we'll take
whatever
them.
works.
Yeah, you can email them, you can drop them off paper, whatever's easiest.
And then it is definitely too late, but the future land use map, I don't know if you saw my whole list of.
I have not
there
seen
were a
that
lot of-
document.
I mean, there were a lot of just plain mistakes. but then there were a lot of recommendations, like the recommendation to change the entire north end of Waukegan Road, north of the railroad tracks, 25 single-family homes to commercial. I don't understand why we would do that to those neighbors up there, but it's getting to be, anyway, I have a whole bunch of comments about the map. I turned them all in, within 3 or 4 days after the last meeting. That was just an example. Yeah, I guess a broad question is, I know in the proposal with Tesca, they go through every lot in our business park and try to, under future land use, and try to predict what type of land use it will be with their different categories of commercial, industrial, mixed use. And why wouldn't we just identify the whole area from a general perspective as these are the acceptable uses out there? What's the purpose of going literally lot by lot and giving them each a different color based on how they think they might change it? I don't understand that, and the same with our R5 district, where they've literally gone through, with about 3 or 4 or 5 different colors and marked up each. I mean, there's broad zoning uses, and why do it lot by lot to predict the future? It doesn't make sense to me to do that. I think a lot easier just to say, if we're gonna have mixed-use development in the north end of the business park, you color the whole north end that color, or,
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, if it's anything other than just saying an example of what could happen, I'll find out if it's anything other than that. But to your point, yeah, I mean, the purpose is it's difficult enough to figure out what's gonna happen there 6 months from now, let alone 20 years from now.
Lot by lot.
Lot by lot.
Yeah.
It just would require a lot of rezoning if,
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Simple is best.
A little too surgical. Specific, yeah.
Did the city of Highland Park buy several residential properties? It would be just west of downtown. I don't know if it's on Central or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, was it a mass purchase over time? Oh, it was a developer? Okay. I mean, because they've done a nice job along,
Yeah, those were all old houses that they just slowly started buying up.
Okay.
Kind of like they're trying to do out here in Knollwood, where they convinced everyone to go commercial, but no one's buying that yet. But it was a similar sort of thing, where I think they came in and just worked their way.
What have they put in there?
They haven't yet.
Oh, they haven't? Oh, okay.
By 41 and 176.
And Shagbark.
Oh,
Shagbark.
right,
Yeah, they
right.
they convinced everyone to sell for commercial
you know.
purposes, so that the whole.
Sorry. They convinced the whole neighborhood, it includes the fire department, the hotel, and down, is that Shagbark? Yeah, down Shagbark, to convert to sell for commercial purposes. So everyone has a for sale sign up.
Right.
But no one has bid on the commercial purchase yet. So it was similar to that in Highland Park, only for residential use, where they just worked the whole neighborhood. But those were really old houses, so.
Yeah, yes, they were older, certainly.
Yeah, and they made it, lucrative for them.
Okay.
But I don't think what they put in is any cheaper or, because we just live in an affluent community.
All the way down the North Shore.
Maybe I misunderstood your question. I'm sorry.
I wasn't very articulate, Drew, as far as the exact location, and I don't think I've been back there for a year or more, but it just, there was a lot of activity as far as, I think tear downs or whatever, and I wasn't sure.
In Highland Park?
Yeah, but it was west of.
West of the
Green Bay Road.
downtown, yeah.
Yeah, it's a big apartment, it's a big apartment building there now.
Is that what it is?
Down at the bottom of the hill there.
Where you come up the Highway 41, between 41 and Green Bay, like that, as you're going east into town after the swimming pool and Park District.
It's on the north side.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
one house left.
Yeah.
One house didn't sell, and it's just on the corner
right?
with a picket fence. It's just very cute, next to this big building.
But that was all private development.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I just thought maybe it was.
Senior housing, I think, right?
Is this, I don't know if
I
they have,
think one of them is a senior
there's a
housing.
bunch of those there too. A lot of seniors in Highland Park.
Yeah, the Village of Lake Bluff has purchased properties in its downtown and around its downtown over the years, land banking. In fact, my understanding, the village was the primary property owner when Block 1 was redeveloped. And that helps facilitate being a property owner. The village can make, to choose to subsidize projects to a degree it wants. It can help when there's fewer property owners to deal with, right? That's always the biggest issue, how many people you're dealing with. And so the village has done that and will continue to be opportunistic, so.
Okay. Good.
Another odd question of our downtown with the land use map, was it the intention, Tesca has the Washington Garden area as a new multifamily development. I was wondering if that was a
Washington
mistake. The area where the garden club is taking care of that lot along Sheridan Road, and really, it's a really nice plot in there, and I just was wondering if that was a mistake, or if that was an intentional recommendation.
I think it was the idea, it was a conversation starter. And if the idea is, historically, the village has had a vision to maintain a green belt along that corridor, and so that would be, in keeping with that, it'd be don't do that, leave it there. But the village at the same time has furthered the existence of the commercial property directly north and contiguous of Washington Park. So if there's a change of heart, it's not the first bookend on the green belt. It's been a while, but this board recommended relief on a project there to rehab that structured mixed-use property.
Well, very productive dialogue.
We have plenty to work on.
But I think we have to have a cutoff that's reasonable.
Yeah.
So, before we leave agenda item number 7, anything else on that, or go to commissioner's report?
If anyone has comments tonight that they want me to make a copy of so they can take their comments back with them, I can do that to transmit to Tesca, or if you want the 2 weeks to work on them, feel free to work on it.
Do you know if Tesca got all these, or?
We'll make sure they do, if you want to provide them. And if you're worried, we get copies of them before we distribute them. That's what I'm sensing.
Well, yeah, it's a lot of work to lose.
Yeah, okay. And we'll get you existing future land use maps, large scale, for you in the zoning maps. You guys have those as tools.
So just 2 questions. You got the commissioner, did you ask about if any questions?
Your agenda item number 8, commissioner's report, any questions?
So the single-family residential, where the resident is, turned the letter in tonight opposing up in Crabtree, the couple that's got the breakwater project underway. Have they moved forward at all with their single-family house development? Because they came in for, a variation
For the Blair property, no, they
long
haven't.
time ago.
Yeah, no, they haven't.
Their letter made it sound like they're digging in.
Well, we're still repairing the bluff, right? So, a year
Said they
later.
were almost done, or they were done.
They're the current user of that road. There's been multiple over the last few years between the Beans family at the end of Lillian Dell, rebuilding that, and then the park work going on there with the NSWRD project, hauling. We try to
going down our
lots of trucks, and we tried to share the pain. Some down Center, some down Scranton. You know, giving the time of year and what's happening, and trying to be cognizant of school children and summer activities. So it's hard to redistribute the pain. So.
How's the agenda look for October, I guess, Michael?
I am not sure that we have anything. There's one applicant that we wanted to apply, but I don't know that they will, which is the people doing the outdoor use at the masonry building at the DeMarie properties. I've not heard from them recently. I don't recall anyone else talking to us about being on that agenda.
I'm not aware of any either.
Well, the other thing is the accessory use, the accessory dwelling unit discussion. We wanted the financial guy to talk about the reasons why. So he's going to come and talk about the accessory dwelling units in October.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Has anything happened with Lawrence's property, where he wants to build a restaurant?
He is asking for an extension on his zoning relief. He continues to meet with investors. He has some. I think he's getting closer to his critical mass. So
Good, hope so.
I'll make a comment that I learned in my travels over, which is why I was gone in August. The state of Maine has just recently prohibited municipalities from prohibiting ADUs. So they have to allow property owners to the ability to build at least one ADU on their property.
The state of Maine.
State of Maine.
Wow, it's not Massachusetts.
is that an economic development move?
Economic development and cost of housing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And the ability to find workers, because particularly in the touristy areas where property values have skyrocketed, their workers have to live 2 hours away.
Yeah.
So the thought is maybe get some more affordable housing for people.
Interesting.
So it's out there.
Yes.
All right, any further discussion tonight? I think very, very productive, obviously, and thanks so much.
I have a
to
staff
Mike.
report item that's not listed on the agenda, if that's all right. Just a really brief one having to do, it's a follow-up on the pickleball matter. Just, we've been working with the Park District on, before it goes back to the village board with your recommendation about, they're still open to having a more expansive approval between Blair or Artesian for a full Rio or not, and so we're working with them on some language and sharing back and forth, trying to see if they're get to some level of comfort that they would pursue that. So just to let you know, that's still going in a positive direction. Absolute worst case scenario, they come through with a narrow approval for what they've talked about, but we're seeing if they can do more. So
Great, thank you, Drew. Anything else tonight? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks for a productive meeting, though.
Thank you.
Thanks for running it, Gary.
Good
well
to
done.